Good evening. Wow. I'd like to welcome everybody to the public hearing for the Planning and Zoning for Tuesday, June 13th, 2023. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Our order of business, well, we'll have the reading of the public notice, please.
To be published in the Journal Enquirer Thursday, June 1, 2023, and Thursday, June 8, 2023, South Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission. Notice is hereby given that there will be a public hearing on Tuesday, June 13, 2023 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers of the South Windsor Town Hall to consider the following. Number one, application 23-15P, O Evergreen LLC, request for a zoning text amendment to sections 4.2.2, 4.2.5, and 10.3 to modify section 10, definition of drive-through facility, and add the definition of drive-up facility and fast casual restaurant. Modify several criteria in section 4.2.5 for such uses in Buckland Gateway Development Zone, continued from May 23, 2023. Number two, application 23-16P, Ivanov text amendment, request for a zoning text amendment to add a definition for short-term rentals and define criteria for such rentals in all residential zones, continued from May 23, 2023. Number three, application 23-11P, industrial flex space, request for site plan approval for 39,850 square feet of flex space contained within multiple buildings on property located at 75 Connecticut Avenue, I-Zone. Copies of the applications are on file in the office of the town clerk and/or planning department and online at https://www.southwindsorct.gov, planning department pages, planning and zoning commission applications. At this hearing, interested persons may be heard and written comments by the public will be received by mail or email. Persons who may require an accommodation can contact staff Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at 860-644-2511, extension 2329. Bart Pasicanis, Chairman, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you very much. We do have a few commissioners that are missing tonight, so I will appoint Commissioner Carey for Commissioner Foley. Our order of business tonight will be first to hear from our applicants, then we'll hear from town staff, then we'll hear from members of the public, first those in favor, and then those against or having questions or concerns, and then we'll hear from commissioners. If anyone has a cell phone, if they could please turn it to vibrate or shut it off, we would appreciate it. And at this time, I'll call forward our first application 23-15P, O Evergreen LLC. While they're coming up, if during the public comment, if anybody speaking could make sure they sign in either before or after their testimony, we would appreciate it. And there is a microphone up there. Just make sure you have a red light before you start speaking. There's a button on the bottom, I believe. You got it.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Better. Hi, my name is James Klusnick. I'm in-house counsel for O'Connell Development Group, Inc., the owner of the applicant, O Evergreen LLC. Sarah Stein, who was here at the last hearing, is out of town and was unable to make it. I am joined with my counsel, Mike Ceccarulli from Pullman and Comley, who is also here to represent the applicant. And in the interest of time, I'll invite Mike up to give you a few comments.
Good evening. Mike Ceccarulli, Pullman and Comley, 90 State House Square, Hartford, Connecticut. We presented this petition at the last meeting. We had, I think, a pretty involved discussion of some of the aspects of it that you had questions on. Some additional changes were suggested, I think, in coordination with planning staff to try to address some broader consistency concerns. And these were to clarify the indoor seating, outdoor seating requirement. That was an issue that was raised at the prior meeting. And so my client has offered a clarification to specify that indoor seating is a required component of a drive-through. And beyond that, there was some clarification to make it clear that drive-through requirements would not apply under 4.2.16 to the extent that they're contemplated in the context of a drive-up facility, which is one of the new definitions that we had offered under this proposed text amendment. So rather than describe anything further, those were very limited changes. I invite you to provide us with any questions that you have. If we can offer any answers, happy to do so.
Okay, if that's all you have, we'll turn to our town staff, our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Okay, thank you. If you recall at the last meeting, I didn't have a CROG report yet for the record, so at this time I'd like to read the CROG report dated May 30th, 2023. It says the staff of the Region Planning Commission of the Capital Region Council of Government has reviewed this zoning referral and finds no apparent conflict with regional plans and policies or the concerns of neighboring towns. Just a brief comment on what was submitted. So in your packets, I did send you Sarah Stein's email as well as a revised text with some blue line language in it. Towards the bottom is the section F, which talks about, that was a section I was concerned about making sure that we didn't allow for menu boards and those kinds of things with pickup windows. So I had specifically requested that we don't allow sections D and E from 4.2.16. So Commission can decide whether you feel that's adequately covered under this, or if you want to call out anything specifically. I know Commissioner Wagner has some specific comments you might want to make related to that. But that really is all I have for staff comments. Actually, just one other thing. Related to whether or not we require any kind of spots for pickup, I think we talked about if you have a drive-up window and you're not ready. Down at Panera, for example, in Evergreen Walk, there is not anything that's dedicated as a pull-off window, and that's a drive-through facility. So, and there are some spaces in that general vicinity if someone were to need to pull off. So I think if we were to require it, we would really want to only be talking about a limited number, maybe one or two, because I really don't think the way these pickup windows are designed that you should have a stack up of people waiting for their orders. With that, that's all the staff comments I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns they'd like to voice? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, we'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Cavagnaro?
Thank you. I have no comments on this application.
Okay, Commissioner LeBlanc?
Thank you. Nothing right now either. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you. I start with a simple one. On paragraph E, subparagraph F, it says land unit must not have direct access to an arterial road. And my question is, how does Evergreen Walk fit into this? Is it one land unit, or what are the land units that would, because Evergreen Walk has access, several accesses to arterial roads.
Point of clarification, was that intended for planning staff or for the applicant?
I guess it's a question for the applicant first. Okay.
Yeah, so I think the intent here was to not have encroachment feeding drive-through service on a major arterial road. So the idea being that if there's going to be a developed parcel, primary access for the drive-through would have to be established through a secondary driveway. And for the specific property, I can speak to the property owned by my client, that property, which is in front of the Costco, it's a pad site where you've seen the new People's Bank building go up. That site is going to be served, at least for any potential drive-through use, it would have to be served through one of the side roads that comes off of the main roadway. And the idea is that you don't cause the stacking where it's going to impact traffic flow on the artery.
Yeah, I think I understand the purpose of the language. I'm just afraid that,
You could simplify it, maybe to say the development proposal, you know, it cannot have direct access to Ontario Road rather than the land unit,
yeah, I like that. I like that better.
development proposal.
Because otherwise, all of Evergreen Walk would be excluded from having your facility among others, okay?
I didn't understand the nature of your question when you raised it. I understand your point, and to the extent that it provides clarity, I don't think that
Okay.
should be an issue for us.
Thank you. Let's see. And G, buildings must be individually designed and subject to architectural review, committee review, or something like that.
I don't really think you need to put it here. It's in other parts of your regulation, in the Buckland Gateway Zone, so I don't really think you need to
Okay, good.
reiterate it.
Finally, I asked you to print out some copies of section 4216. It's referred to in two places here. In paragraph E, the main paragraph, it tells you that a drive-through facility must comply with the 4216 design. And then down in paragraph F, it says a drive-up facility is a permitted use provided it complies with the design standards set forth in 4216, excluding those design standards that apply solely to a drive-through facility. So I took out my copy of 4216, and I brought one to everybody in case you didn't bring your books with you. The whole title of the section is Design Standards for Drive-Through Facilities. And it's very difficult to tell as you go down paragraph by paragraph whether it applies only to a drive-through facility or whether we would want it to say drive-through facilities and drive-up facilities. So I would start with the title of that section, changing it. And then I think the queuing language is flexible enough that someone would recognize a drive-up facility is going to have less queuing. We talk about drive-through lane or drive-up lane, I don't know, like in paragraph D. I'm worried about, it talks about drive-through elements of a building in C, drive-through lanes, drive-through lane in D, you know, limit one preview board. Well, okay, that's one that would be clearly only applying, but I guess I think some of these paragraphs also apply to drive-up facilities, and we should make that clear. Others don't. Like G, canopies covering a drive-through, should say drive-through or drive-up, shall use a similar roof forming. I think that should apply to both, not just to drive-through. H, again, canopies should apply to both. Again, I talks about only drive-throughs. So I guess the idea is to go through here and just clarify which paragraphs apply to both and which paragraphs only apply to drive-through. Now, paragraph K on the second page. Applicant will screen from public right-of-way all cars within the drive-through queue and the drive-up queue, or, I don't know. We need to fix that, I guess, is my point in general. And I don't know if we want to spend time today going paragraph by paragraph and solving it, or, again, have to continue the hearing.
I'm thinking we can do that in deliberations.
Okay? All right? That sounds good to me.
You know, in talking with the applicant, when we were looking at this originally, I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought the intent was that you could comply with these, and that's why you included in your text language, is your intention was to be able to comply with these, whether it's a drive-up or a drive-through facility. And I brought the issue of the menu board up, because again, with a drive-up facility, a menu board wouldn't be appropriate. It doesn't sound like anything we would do would significantly change anything other than clarify it for our purposes. I mean, do you have a concern with us doing that as part of our deliberation? I just want to make sure the applicant's comfortable with that. That's,
I think our primary concern is just not creating unnecessary drive-through requirements that are clearly not realistic or contemplated, where we're not going to be operating a drive-through. And if there's changes of that nature that you think are appropriate to provide that clarification, I think my client's comfortable with that, allowing you to do so during deliberation.
Yep, one coming up.
There is a thing about 10 vehicle spaces on the queues and so on. We might want to comment on what you need for queuing. I don't think you need 10 spaces for a drive up.
No, probably not. Just in general, I do see your point, though, and that was probably something I should have looked at more closely. And maybe while the commission goes through, can just identify those paragraphs that would apply to a drive-up as either, we're fine with what you have here. There's just an omission on our part to clarify that.
I guess most of the things I think we could do in the deliberations, but I think maybe if I could get a comment from you about paragraph N.
I'm sorry, is that M or N?
N as in nobody.
It's right here.
Oh, yeah.
That way when we do it, we'll do it.
So, I mean, I think I'm going to defer to Jim in that regard, but I think specifically in terms of queuing, I don't foresee that being substantive to the extent that we're really, I mean, everything is essentially a parking space for a drive-up. So there's really, I mean, I think that.
I mean, like it says 10 spaces in the drive-through aisle. You want to give us a number that what you think you need? Like,
oh, you're asking for designated parking for the drive-up customers waiting? Is that what you're specifying?
well, I think your queuing area can be shorter, and maybe there ought to be a certain amount of parking for the people who order from the parking lot. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that that's a more practical concern, where you have maybe designated spaces for people who are retrieving orders that have already been put in through the app. But practically speaking, queuing I don't think is a realistic issue, because there's not going to be a stacking lane that's going to be designed to feed any of those spaces. It's really going to be people parking as if it were an ordinary, let's say it's a restaurant, where you're driving up and you're parking around the site in designated spots for that use. So we don't contemplate a stacking or queuing concept really applicable to a drive-up.
So what if we take that sentence that says for restaurants a minimum of 10 vehicle spaces and just say for drive-through restaurants?
I think that for drive-through, for pickup spaces, Jim, what did you think was a realistic number based on your experience? Two? I mean, is two acceptable?
As a minimum.
Yeah, but there's not going to be a window.
So I think what you're trying to say is for a drive-through facility, you're looking to keep the 10 queuing
Right.
spaces.
But
I think
not-
what you're saying is in a drive-up facility, you're contemplating 2 spaces as like reserved spaces for potential
Correct.
waiters. We're talking 2
Correct.
different things.
Well, you have a pickup window at least allowed. I don't know if it's going to be done in your case, but
I don't think we're contemplating a pickup window in a drive-up context. It's really going to be where you enter the building to pick up your order, or you're going to be putting in an order in advance, and you're going to have somebody provide service to your vehicle to deliver your order. There's not going to be,
That's not the concept that I've seen. So I think we want to be general for this.
Yeah.
And
So I'm thinking like Shake Shack has a, or I don't know, they have a drive up,
they have a pickup window, Shake
A
Shack does.
pickup window.
Yeah.
okay,
they're not going to get a queue there. So maybe I would just make this queue requirement apply only to drive-through. Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm not sure that if anybody sees any other area where we need to talk to the applicant, or we can just take care of it in deliberation. I don't know, paragraph O. I think that's all of my concerns on that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Dexter?
I do think we can handle most of it, you know, in our deliberations, so to that end, I have nothing further.
Okay, Commissioner Carey?
I agree, we can handle it in deliberations. I do think that, you know, because they're going to have internal seating, right, and some couple outside tables, they probably need some parking spaces. But I think we can handle it in deliberations.
Okay. And I don't have anything else to offer. So, staff, is there any reason to keep the public hearing open?
No, not at this time.
Okay, applicant?
Thank you for your time tonight. Appreciate your consideration, your suggested changes. We think that these changes will offer a lot of new opportunities in town, and people will be very pleased with them.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any reason to keep the public hearing open? Then we will close the public hearing at 7:23, and it's on our agenda for deliberations later. Okay, our next application is application 23-16P, Ivanov text amendment. Do we have somebody here to represent the applicant?
Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen of the Town Council, I have a short presentation to give you.
Okay, if you could please introduce yourself to the commission.
Absolutely, I apologize. My name is Vasily Ivanov, and I was the one that is proposing language for short-term rental for our town of Windsor Loch, South Windsor. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you today regarding the necessity of defining what short-term rental is in our beloved town of South Windsor. Today, I would like to present to you a balanced perspective and on the advantages of short-term rentals, address questions and concerns that were brought up at our last meeting. At our last meeting, security concerns were brought up, and some may express concerns about the potential impact on security. These people may worry about the increased Airbnb rentals that could lead to a higher turnover of unfamiliar people in their community, potentially increasing the risk of theft and other security issues. My answer to that is Airbnb implements rigorous security measures, and most hosts choose to install security cameras. These hosts also ask guests to provide identification verifications, which is also required by Airbnb. By promoting transparency and accountability, Airbnb works to alleviate security concerns and create a safer environment for both guests and even more importantly for the entire community. Last time we met, property values was a concern. Some homeowners who have invested substantial amounts of money into their properties may be concerned that an influx of short-term rentals could negatively affect property values. They might even argue that the transient nature of Airbnb guests could lead to a decrease in overall desirability and exclusivity of a neighborhood, impacting their investments. While there may be an initial concern about property value, it's worth considering that the potential benefits. Airbnb will attract tourism, which further increases the desirability of a town, leading to a boost in local businesses, employment opportunities, and property demand. By establishing clear regulations and ensuring responsible hosting, the town can maintain an exclusive and appealing environment while enjoying the economic advantages. Noise and disruption. Residents of South Windsor prioritize peace and quiet. They may voice objections based on the potential increased noise and disruption caused by short-term rentals. Concerns could include loud parties, late-night arrivals, an overall change in the character of the neighborhood. Strict regulations and guidelines can address noise and disruption concerns effectively by imposing quiet hours, setting guest behavior expectations, and enforcing penalties for violations. The town can maintain a peaceful atmosphere. Additionally, the increased tourism generated by Airbnb could bring more revenue to the town so the town can invest in other noise control measures or infrastructure. Residents of South Windsor value and adhere to rules, regulations. However, the lack of a definition of what short-term rental is and the lack of oversight leaves anyone to become an Airbnb host. This raises concerns about such issues. You may also raise concerns about such issues as tax evasion, zoning violations, and even safety standards. Therefore, we really need regulations. The town can work closely with Airbnb hosts such as myself and Airbnb even possibly directly to develop systems to promote compliance. Mandatory registration for hosts will ensure safety and zoning regulations that are being met. By collaborating with Airbnb hosts such as myself, local authorities can effectively address the concerns and provide a framework that encourages responsible hosting practices. In conclusion, a well-regulated Airbnb system can bring economic benefit, support local businesses, and provide opportunities for responsible tourism while maintaining the town's desired character and exclusivity.
Okay, does that complete your presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We will turn to our town staff. Michelle Light.
Well, thank you. Again, at our last meeting, we didn't have a CROG report, so I'd like to start by reading that into the record. This is dated May 31st, 2023. The staff of the Regional Planning Commission of the Capital Region Council of Governments has reviewed the zoning referral and finds no apparent conflicts with regional plans or policies of the current concerns of neighboring towns. Just a brief comment. I think, as I said last meeting, from our perspective, we have short-term rentals in that we allow for bed and breakfasts in our residential zone. So that is, if someone asks our office about being able to do a short-term rental, that is what we have for regulations. As I mentioned to the commission, if you want to regulate them, it may be something we want to look at doing a regulation in conjunction with something like a town ordinance. There's a lot of things that we won't be able to get at through zoning that maybe you can get at through an ordinance and then have some policing powers that, again, through the zoning regulation you might not have. So at this point, I haven't prepared anything further, but if the commission does want to do that, it may be something you want to look to do in conjunction with a town ordinance.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, we'll turn it over to the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this text amendment? Please step forward. Is there, hearing none, is there anyone who would like to speak against or have questions or comments or concerns they'd like to voice? Please step forward. Hearing up, please.
Hello, my name is Aude Knickerbocker, and I live actually in Essex, Connecticut, not around here, but I drove an hour to support Mr. Ivanov with his business with Airbnb. And I'm sorry, I usually don't speak in public, so I'm a little bit nervous. But I wanted to tell you, I have been a host myself for almost a year, and I have been in situation where I wanted to make sure my place, my neighbors were safe, and I was in a situation where I wasn't sure if the guests were the right guest, even though there's a ton of procedure made by Airbnb, as well as myself, checking on where those guests come from. Sometimes they do bring more people. But there's a procedure, and I experienced it in myself, and I follow the procedure, and everything went fine because of this. What I'm saying is that those hosts are supported by this platform. It's not just anybody who can come and rent a place. Since last November, actually, nobody can sign up on any Airbnb without a checkup by Airbnb. It's really controlled. I know we hear things on the news, but they put a procedure that's really safe for neighbors, but for also the homeowner. Also, a homeowner who rents their home, they really have to take care of that home. Not only inside, but also outside, in order to stay current and I think it's beneficial also for the neighbors. You will not see, all kind of car parks for months at a time, like a long-term rental. You won't see a garden that is not taken care of. We have to be on top of this, inside and outside of the home. And we bring a lot of local people into that business. We also have, yes, we have guests who are vacationing. Is that the right word? I'm not sure. For vacation. But we have a lot of people transitioning. And we have also workers. We have a lot of nurses who actually rent those homes. This is 2023. Hotel is not necessarily always an option for people. And I'm very proud to be an Airbnb homeowner. I'm proud to have great grades. And I really hope towns will realize the benefits, what we offer to the population too. I'm talking about also funerals. People want to get together in difficult moments. We provide those homes for them. I'm not talking about parties here. I'm talking about actually social moment together. Anyway, that was my little thing, and I hope town will help with those. That's it. Sure. My name is Aude Knickerbocker, and I'm from Essex. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Yes, my name is Bill Hauser. How are you? I've been a host on Airbnb for 10 years now, and I'm originally an empty nester, and I heard about Airbnb on Sunday morning show. Since I've retired in August, I was able to put a roof on my house, shingles, and have new windows put in, and gutters for the income that I've earned from Airbnb over the 10 years. I've been doing short-term rentals and a little bit of long-term rentals. I find that the people are in need of a place to stay, so they're typically, guided for good things. I do a lot of traveling nurses at times, and students and even people visiting from other places. Also, Airbnbs, there's review system of the guest and the host review each other for every stay. So when a guest or when a person does request a booking at your listing, you have a review to read to see how that host is, or how that guest has been rated by other hosts. And with that said too, the guest has I have reviews where the guest can see my reviews and determine if he wants to stay at my place. And I have had absolutely zero problems in the 10 years that I've been doing this. And it's something that I love to do. The people are good. Everybody seems to be a win-win situation. And with this time, this housing crisis we're having and everything that's going on, I just think it's just something that fits in perfectly. And with that, I'll sign my name and thank you.
Okay, and your addresses?
Vernon, Connecticut. Do you want the
Pardon me, where? Vernon?
Connecticut?
Okay. Yes, please. Thank you. And you had mentioned you do short-term and long-term rentals. What is your duration for short-term rental?
Well, you can do a one night. You know, the fact that I live on 84 interstate that goes from Boston to New York, I have one-nighters.
So,
And then I have up to 3 days.
yeah, and I'm looking for your input as far as short-term versus long-term. Is it a month is short-term and a month and a day is long-term?
I'm
or-
not sure if there is a number.
Okay,
I'm not sure. I don't have.
okay,
any-
thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this text amendment? Hearing and seeing none, we'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Carey.
I think the overall concept is really good. I do think that Michelle provided us with some regulations from other towns. And, when we were talking about Airbnbs, I don't think that what we got was restricted only to Airbnbs, and probably we couldn't do that because there's VVROs and other things. So I think that, Michelle, with your guidance, whether it should be an ordinance or some type of regulation where, it gets beefed up a little bit. For example, does the homeowner have to live there? It's one of the things that another town had. So I think overall the idea is good. I do think that we need to really either put regulations in planning and zoning, or I like the idea of an ordinance to make sure that we do the right thing for the town in allowing it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Dexter.
And just to add to that, some sort of permitting so that we know where they are, I think is important. But overall, I agree with Carol, and it's a good concept. If we already know Vernon's doing it, I'm sure some of the other abutting towns have regulations, so why not us?
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. I guess, first of all, we don't have in front of us anything which says this is paragraph X, Y, Z. So we don't have an actual amendment in front of us.
Yeah, at the last meeting, I kind of indicated that without knowing whether the commission wanted to see this or not, I didn't put it into definitions and at the last meeting, I really didn't get the direction you wanted me to yet. So I agree, we would have to fit it into our regulations, but without your direction, I didn't want to take it upon myself to do that.
I do like the idea of doing it in concert with the town council, with an ordinance. I think the two speakers that we heard tonight, it's pretty reassuring how this works, how it can work well. So something to cover those relatively rare situations, I think, is where it's not going well is necessary. So I don't know how we should proceed. I'm having I feel like, do we have a deadline? Because this is a text amendment, not a site plan or anything. Do we have a deadline of any sort?
You have a deadline you could continue to keep the hearing open for another 65 days, and then you have a deadline for decision. So, it is like any other application. There are timeframes associated with it. I think it would be hard to change the text amendment and consider an ordinance under that kind of a timeframe. Maybe I'd suggest that if maybe our council liaison, if he thinks it's something the council is interested in, maybe we have a small subcommittee get together and work on it or something along those lines. Again, I think, you want to address the zoning where you want it, how you want it, and I think that the council ordinance part of it could be more the licensing and inspections and those kinds of things. So it may take a little bit of time to put together. So that's how I would proceed if you wanted to.
So in that case, I think maybe the right thing to do would be to deny this without prejudice, and then do the committee idea. So we have language on both sides, and when we have agreement, then we can proceed again. That's all I have.
If we did it that way, we would have to pass it off to the town council, because we don't do ordinances, they do ordinances. If they weren't willing to do an ordinance, I'm not saying they wouldn't be, but it would be their call then, okay?
Well, of course, I'm thinking that we need to get actual language in here and then get an actual ordinance. Without an ordinance, I'm a little nervous about this.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Commissioner LeBlanc.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with what I'm hearing up here, and I do believe that an ordinance is definitely in order, and it's something that we'll have to build upon some set of documents, and just not having anything to put my arms around here. So when you do something like this, you have to have the full body and delete what you don't want in order to write a contract, if you will, is how I'm looking at this. And we don't really have much really to go by. So we have to build it and fit it to meet the town and certainly the residents that would like to use it. So this is a step process, and it's something we certainly won't complete tonight. But thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cavagnaro.
Thank you. After researching what other towns have done, I've run into some alarming reports about short-term rentals and a lot of their downsides. Apologies I didn't bring it up last meeting, but I ran into this quite recently. I'm going to mention a couple sources during me reading this. So from the Economic Policy Institute from 2019, the economic costs of Airbnb and Vrbo and other short-term rentals likely outweigh the benefits. While the introduction and expansion of Airbnb into United States cities and towns worldwide carry enormous potential economic benefits and costs, the costs to renters in local jurisdictions likely exceed the benefits to travelers and property owners. Rising housing costs are a key problem for American families, and evidence suggests that the presence of Airbnbs and other short-term rentals raise local housing costs. The largest and best documented potential costs of Airbnb expansion is the reduced supply of housing as properties shift from serving local residents to serving Airbnb travelers, which hurts local residents by raising housing costs. There's evidence that this cost is real because housing demand is relatively inelastic. People's demand for somewhere to live doesn't decline when prices increase. Even small changes in housing supply, like those caused by converting long-term rental properties to Airbnb units, can cause significant price increases. High-quality studies indicate that Airbnb's introduction and expansion into cities across the United States, for example, may have raised average rents by nearly $400 for every city resident. Now, those are cities, that's not going to be representative of what could happen in South Windsor. Another thing I have here from the Harvard Law Review from 2016, short-term rentals reduce the affordable housing supply by distorting the housing market into two interconnected mechanisms. The first such mechanism is one simple conversion. Any housing unit that was previously occupied by a town resident but is now listed on Airbnb as a year-round unit is a unit that has been removed from the rental market and has essentially been added to the community supply of hotel rooms. This leads to a real but likely mild increase in rents. More disconcertingly, conversion reduces the community's already limited supply of affordable housing units. The second mechanism is hotelization. So long as a property owner or leaseholder can rent out a room, either Airbnb, Vrbo, or any other platform, for cheaper than the price of a hotel room, while earning a substantial premium over the residential market or rent-controlled rent, there is an overpowering incentive to list each unit in a building on Airbnb rather than rent to local residents, therefore creating cottage hotels. This decreases the supply of housing and spurs displacement among current tenants. And then two other studies I have here from the University of Massachusetts from 2016. Home sharing is increasing rents by decreasing the supply of units available to potential residents, and that one standard deviation increase in Airbnb listings relative to the total number of housing units in a census tract is associated with an increase in asking rents of 0.4%. For those census tracts in the highest decile of Airbnb listings relative to the total housing units, this increase in asking rents range from 1.3% to 3.1%, which equates to townwide mean monthly asking rent to anywhere to an increase of much as $93 a month. So finally, from the National Bureau of Economic Research, UCLA, and the University of Southern California, on a national basis, a 10% increase in Airbnb listings can lead to a 0.42% increase in rents and a 0.76% increase in home prices. So just to sum up everything, and just to put on the record, since 2011, short-term rentals have been on the rise. 800% it's grown by even more. With all that being said, and I guess all the research and facts out there, I will be voting against this application, 23-16P, morally, and as it is a text amendment, and we have the legislative authority to do so. With all that being said, I will be voting against it, as I don't think it is in the best interests of South Windsor. So that is all the comments I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I agree that if we move forward, it should be in the form of an ordinance through the town council. As we talked about at the first public hearing, if there's issues with it through the planning and zoning regulations, our way to fix it is through our zoning enforcement officer who works, say, 8 to 5 p.m. If it's through an ordinance, then it can be policed by the South Windsor Police. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, the Airbnbs and the other various options for short-term rentals. But I would like more information before I was to move forward, so I would not support it at this time. We can decide in deliberations exactly what we want to do. I think it would be important for us to have some zoning regulations as far as what defines a short-term rental, if it's 30 days or less, and a long-term rental would be anything else longer than that period. That's my input. Staff, is there any reason to keep the public hearing open?
Not for staff, no.
Does the applicant want to give any additional information or?
Currently in South Windsor, there is no regulations, and I know you keep mentioning bed and breakfast. That's not short-term. That is a hotel style. Airbnb, VRBO, and other short-term rentals, as you said, potentially could raise the price, rental price in the area. We are South Windsor, and we don't exactly have cheap rentals here, or budget rentals here, so that doesn't apply here to South Windsor. Also, not having any definition of what short-term rental is and what long-term rental is, how can we defer, anything else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, is there any reason to keep the public hearing open? Commissioner Cavagnaro?
Thank you. Yeah, I would just like to say that even if we do establish, language and definitions, it's not stopping anyone 10, 20 years down the line from buying a second or a third or a fourth home, taken away from other people moving in and really using them as investment properties. So I'm not going to say that it wouldn't apply here. There's always a potential that it would. But I, again, just want to put that into the record. There's still a good chance that maybe 10, 20 years down the line, it would hurt us in the long run, so.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree with you, Chairman. But the other side of this, the data that you presented, is it presents an opportunity for our residents to increase the value of their properties. So there's two sides to that. I am very concerned about affordable housing, but with this especially, there are two sides that we have to think about.
Yep. There's also another side of the silent residents. We really haven't heard any residents input negatively, but a lot of those type of inputs happen with experience. And South Windsor hasn't had that much, if any, experience with Airbnbs. So I'll ask again, is there any reason to keep the public hearing open? Hearing and seeing none, we'll close the public hearing at 7:52. And it's on for deliberations later tonight. Our next item on our agenda is public hearing application 23-11P, industrial flex space. Do we have someone here to represent the applicant?
Yes, good evening. I'm Greg McCracken. I am a lawyer at Jacobs Walker Rice and Berry in Manchester, here to represent the applicant tonight, Trio Investment Properties. I'm just doing the introductions and kind of setting the table, and then I'll sit down. But tonight we have here Peter DeMalley of Design Professionals. He's the president that will be starting, following up with Jim Otis, our civil engineer for the project, and then Steve Fleschner, the architect on this. After him will be Jim Aldrich, the contractor, and also a professional engineer himself. And then we'll close it with Glenn Martin, who's the landscape architect. With us tonight also is Dan Rosso, who's one of the principals of the applicant. So if questions come up about intended use, tenancies, interior space, other stuff that's more kind of pragmatic and forward-looking, he'll be available to answer any questions. So with that, I will turn it over to Peter, and thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Pasconis, members of the commission, for your record, Peter DeMalley, President and CEO of Design Professionals, an 18-person consulting practice, offices right here in South Windsor at 21 Jeffrey Drive. And thank you, Attorney McCracken, for the intros. Just to let you know, another member of the design team is not mentioned tonight because he doesn't need to be here, and that is Jim McManus. He was at the 3 hearings we went before the Inland Wetlands Agency, which concluded on May 17th, at which time the Inland Wetlands Agency unanimously approved the application. We have 0 wetlands impact, and so we thought there was no need for him to be here tonight, but he handled that, in that capacity. The site, which I'll get into in a second, but specifically the site itself is 6.44 acres in size, and it's at the very end of Connecticut Avenue. It has about 17.9% wetlands, this is 1.15 acres, which is the northerly and northwest corner, essentially northwest corner of the site. And we have no wetlands disturbance with this application. 75 Connecticut Avenue is one of the last undeveloped properties in this industrial park, now known as Constitution Landing. It was previously known as Governor Square Business Center, and it was also previously known as Park Center. If you know the history, Park Center even had an underground garage parking and a 14-story office tower at one point. The Savin brothers had that proposal. It's a very interesting reading if you can get a hold of that, maybe at the South Windsor Library, or maybe Michelle has a copy. But you should take a look at the plans for Park Center. Very ambitious project, likes of which we've never seen in this town. Under zoning, we have, our subject zone is in the industrial zone, and all the industrial development around it, and there are a couple of undeveloped lots within the industrial park also, along Nutmeg Road South and along Talbot Lane. So those have yet to be developed, but this is one of the, I think, third to last lot to be developed in this industrial park. Virtually everything's been developed. To the north of us is Carla's Pasta, now known as, I think, Tribe 9, food production facility. Directly to the west of us on the other side of Connecticut Avenue, we're at number 75, is 250 Nutmeg Road South, the L-shaped building, just to the left of our colored site there. And then on Connecticut Avenue, the twin buildings just next to us off our southwestern corner. So those are all in the industrial zone. And to the east of us is the tail end of Edgewood Drive, which is opposite Elizabeth Street. Couple lots there, and then you go, street is renamed Judy Lane, and it goes out and around the corner. So we abut lots on the west side of Judy Lane and Edgewood Drive, and then we're on the north side of Barbara Road, where most of the lots, there's one at the end, most of them are on the south side of it, opposite our development, and there's one house at the corner, which is actually the one where it's in closest proximity to this. When they did that neighborhood, commission apparently did not require it so long ago, did not require a buffer within that development, so they don't have a 50-foot buffer. No one enjoys that, to screen them from the industrial zone. And as you know, the most challenging developments that this town, this commission faces is when someone proposes a commercial or industrial development adjacent to a residential zone, especially when it's existing developed residential area. So that's the greatest challenge, and we recognize that, and our clients recognize that going into this. And so you'll be hearing from us about a number of different measures that we've taken in order to accommodate the neighbors and to make the least possible impact for any industrial development. And that's what we're doing. So let me get into some of the particulars here. So the proposed use is we call it industrial flex development, more commonly known throughout the industry as an incubator facility. Came from the term of mostly startups, small businesses could start here. Gerber Scientific was an example of a small business start here, then became a big business over time. Other businesses have done that. Electrical contractors, they start in a small unit with a one garage space, a little office and a bathroom, and then they evolve. They outgrow that, they may expand into the unit next to them, and then they build their own building. That's one reason why this town has such a large quantity of industrial businesses and commercial businesses, because we have so much of this incubator space, most of which was developed 20, 30 years ago. So it's getting a little bit age to it. So what we're trying to do is create the new state-of-the-art incubator type facility, recognizing some things that Michelle has brought to our attention and Jeff, how to handle that, and so it becomes a much better development and state-of-the-art development. So we've made a lot of changes here, and we'll go through those with all the various presentations by other members of the design team and myself. So most of the tenants will be, as I said, smaller, but like electrical contractors, plumbing contractors, very small industrial businesses. And also we found that there are like satellite facilities. If there is a salesman for a particular national organization, they need a little storage and a little office, that type of thing, they'll go in there. It's a listed permitted use. This commission is, I'm guessing it's around a dozen. We started looking around at those. We'll have some comments with respect to that. But they're quite common in this town, but they do have age to them, and we're going to have a new and improved version. So the layout, if we could go to the main color rendering, if we could, Glenn, please. There we go. Okay, we have a, let's see if we can use this to cursor. That thing is going, are you down here? Okay, here we go. Okay, so this development consists of 4 buildings with 26 of these incubator units, standalone units for rent. That Dan Rosso, our client who's here, would like to develop with his partners. And again, it's an office, bathroom, garage with overhead door, 1 or 2 overhead doors. Steve Fleshman from Steve Fleshman Architect out of Brimfield, Mass. will be getting into further detail later on about the buildings themselves. I'm sure you have some questions for him. So we have a circumferential loop. You come in from the cul-de-sac. Try this again here. I can't get that to work. Sorry about that. Okay, anyways, over in the left side of the exhibit, you have the gray circular cul-de-sac, the northerly end of Connecticut Avenue. And then we have a circumferential loop. The driveway comes in. It varies in width between 24 feet and 30 feet, where it's between 2 buildings with the incubator facilities and garage and stuff. Right there, it goes to 30 feet, and it's where it's primarily parking on the north and south sides of the center building. It's at 24 feet. And we have that designed so that we can accommodate circulation, even for fire apparatus and for box trucks. Some of them we're anticipating, some people may have some larger vehicles other than just a survey van, for example, or a van for a plumber, what have you. Some of them may have a pickup truck, maybe a little bit longer, and some may have a box truck. So we're accommodating that only in the buildings, the design characteristics of the buildings. We can even have vehicles in tandem, but we're also accommodating them outside. There are places for them to actually park. When we were touring the town and other area incubator facilities, we're looking for what areas, what can we make it better? One thing is paint striping. Most of the facilities have no more stripes. You can't tell where the parking is. You can't tell if they have oversized spaces. We're looking for that. But our clients agreed to periodically, as needed, restripe so that you can tell where the parking spaces are and the other no parking zones, that type of thing. So we went around looking for that. The 4 buildings total 39,850 square feet. Building 1 is to the west, right next to the cul-de-sac. That only has 3 units in it. Those are our largest units, and they have 2 garages each. And they're deep for tandem. Unlike most incubator facilities in town, and Steve can get into this, our team decided, working with Jim Aldrich, our general contractor, and our client who's got experience with industrial developments, and the architect and members of the design team, we determined we're going to have wider overhead doors. Because some vehicles, some outfits just need to be able to go through a wider door to get their product in and out. And also their vehicles may be a little bit wider, so we wanted to accommodate that. A lot of these incubator facilities do not have the wide doors, and therefore they can't accommodate all the needs of prospective tenants. So we can better meet the needs of some prospective tenants. That's why we've got that. Although you require 9 by 18 parking spaces, and we exceed the required numbers of parking spaces, we have designed 6 spaces in front of the westerly building. By the way, I just review it. Building 1 is the one to the west by the cul-de-sac. The center building is building number 2. The long building on the east side adjoining the residential zone is Building 3, and the small building at the southerly end, adjacent to Barber Road neighborhood, is Building number 4. So we have Building number 1, we have in front of the overhead doors, we designed it, again, to accommodate some larger vehicles beyond our parking requirements that you have, 9 by 18 spaces. So we have, in front of Building 1, we have 6 spaces that can accommodate, that are large, 15 feet wide and 30 feet long to accommodate, let's say, a box truck, for example, easily, without projecting into the drive lanes. Someone could do that park there as they need, and they can also drive it right into the unit. In fact, in Building 1, the westerly building there, they can drive 2 back-to-back in there, if need be. Building 2 in the middle has 10 15 by 30 spaces outside of the drive lane, so they can accommodate 10 box trucks or whatever, or it could be a pickup truck with a trailer, what have you, type of thing, so it doesn't project out. And it also has another 4 spaces at each of the 4 corners. That's the southwest, northwest, northeast, and southeast corners. We have 4 spaces that are not in front of a garage that are 10 feet by 30, 10 feet wide by 30 feet long at the corners. So Dan Rosso and his partners, when they have prospective tenants, people who have the larger vehicles are going to be Building 1 and Building 2. If they have wider vehicles, they'll be able to go to Building 3. It has 10 spaces in front of the units that are 17 feet wide and 18 feet long. So if you have an exceptionally long vehicle, it could go inside the garage, or if they want a space for it, they need to occupy another unit that accommodates that size vehicle. So they're going to interview their prospective tenants, find out what their needs are for parking, and put them in the appropriate location within the development. So as I mentioned, there's conventional spaces that you require in your zoning are 9 by 18, 63 are required. We're proposing 69, but we also have a net gain of 5 additional spaces to bring it up to 74, 5 in reserve. We don't think we're going to need those. Biggest concentration of spaces on 26 spaces on the north side of the center building, Building number 2. And also that's 26 spaces there, and then also an additional 14 at the southerly end. So that's the highest concentration of parking spaces. We have another 32 spaces in garages. That's not counting for any tandem use. Just for, if you anticipate that there may be one commercial vehicle in there, for example, overnight, they could do that. They don't want them subject to catalytic converter thefts like I was hit twice. And then, so we've got, as I said, 74 spaces conventional, then we have 26 spaces in front of overhead doors, and then we have another 32 spaces in garages. So that's potential, without doing tandem, potential for accommodating 132 spaces without anyone needing to park in our nice driveways. We have done turning templates, and we can accommodate fire apparatus in our circular drive. And we also can accommodate box trucks. And we, if need be, and this is going to be a rare occasion, but we can even accommodate a WB-50 on this small site to go all the way around without having to back up. There is an existing on the east side that's to the right side in the buffer area. The Planning and Zoning Commission implemented an easement, a trail easement, which is existing to this day to the east side of Carlos Pasta or Tribe 9. It's in place. I don't know how much it's used, but it's there, and it's a requirement with this property running with the land. So the buffer is also going to the trail with it, just like they have for Carlos Pasta. And Glenn Martin will review his design for that particular trail system within the buffer as well. To the north, to the west of, that's to the left of Building 1, right by between there and the cul-de-sac, we have a water quality basin that Jim Otis, our professional engineer, is going to review. And then to the north of of buildings 2 and 3. You see in the blue area, that's the larger of the two water quality basins. And Jim will not only address that, but also Glenn's going to address his ambitious planting plan for that, as well as for the buffer area. All 4 buildings are low profile, substantially less in height than you allow in your zoning regulations. They could be 75 feet from the property line. That's a 50-foot buffer plus 25-foot yard. And we're substantially lower, and I'll let Steve Fleshman address the height of the buildings and how high you're allowed in the zone, which is considerably higher. I'll let him address that, so as not to be redundant. He can also address how his design, the facades, that's the south side of building 4, and then the east side of building 3 are designed, how the color was selected with the Architectural Design Review Committee. Michelle was there, and staff, and then how they really function as a wall. And what's behind it, the features behind the building, we're trying to keep it as non-noticeable as possible. He'll describe some of the things we did architecturally there, and Glenn and he can discuss what we're doing or not doing there with respect to illumination. The buffer, Glenn will get into more detail, but we had to rule out berms because of several factors. One is to save the existing trees. There are not a huge number of large trees to the east side and south side of the development along the residential property line. There are not a large number of them, but we want to save whatever we can. We have a limited area to do it. Plus, we do need to, the canopy is not great understory there, and a lot of the branches are higher in the bigger trees. So we need to establish buffer plantings that'll do an effective job of screening the residential areas from the development. So it's not only the way the buildings have been designed, but also within the buffer. So there's going to be 2 rows of evergreen trees that Glenn has selected and designed for that location. He'll tell you why he selected those. They get very tall and will grow together. That's in the westerly part of it. And so we have only 40 feet to work with between that hedgerow and the property lines on the east and south sides. So as a consequence, we can't get a tall berm in there. But second of all, the properties to the east of us are a higher elevation, slightly higher, so they drain toward us. We can't block the flow of the water. And also, we don't want to have our top of our berm shedding water into their backyards. So, and also, if we put in a berm, we'd be eliminating all those trees. So we do not want to do that. And so as a consequence, Glenn will be discussing what he's doing with respect to that. Okay. Some dimensional considerations. We're allowed to go up to 65% impervious coverage. We're at less than 34%, so we're at about half. And building coverage is 14.2% of the site with building footprints, and we're allowed to go up to 50%, so we're considerably less than half. And the total site disturbance of the 6.44 acres is roughly 4.15 acres. With respect to EV stations, electrical vehicle recharging stations, we're required to have 10%, which is 7. So we'll have 2 that are activated and 5 that are, I consider, in reserve. They'll be wired to it, but they won't be activated at this time. And those 2 are going to be van spaces. One will be handicapped restricted, and the other one will not be, even though they both can accommodate vans. So that will be initially, those will be the first 2 EV spaces. Glenn will be, one thing he'll be reviewing is cross-sections of our buildings and the buffering, et cetera. And he'll also be discussing site lighting throughout the site. We will be dark sky compliant. As to dumpsters, Michelle brought that to my attention, concerned about how some other developments, similar developments that she's observed throughout the region, have dumpsters. Sometimes they're all over the place. You can't see the paint striping on a lot of them, so you don't even know where they're supposed to go, but, and the enclosures. But the dumpsters can be a problem, but we identified that early on. We want to have one central dumpster location. So we have it in northwest corner that's up by the left side or west end of the northerly water quality basin, off the parking lot, so it's easily accessible by the refuse truck. And there will be, it's going to be 24 feet wide and 14 feet deep. What's that mean? That means we will accommodate 3 8-yard dumpsters, which are 6 feet by 6 feet by 7 feet tall. And they'll be in, and Glenn will talk about the enclosure and landscaping around it. But we opted for that because the reason why you see dumpsters all over sites like this is because they're not, the trash service is not provided by the landlord. Everybody contracts with a vendor, refuse hauling vendor. And there are many around. They're good quality guys, but they all contract by themselves, and therefore they all have their own dumpster, or most have their own dumpster. So they place them at the convenience of the trash collection service where they drop them, and the convenience of the unit. We wanted to have it only one place. That means the one vendor is picking up the trash, and that's once a week. Maybe it goes to 2 times a week. It depends on the tenant mix at the time. If they have to, they get it second time. And then also the ownership group can control when the pickups are, so they can even negotiate with vendors so that they can do it during the business day, so it's not done. You know, the outfits can start at 4:30 in the morning. So they go to various sites. And we don't want that. We're right next to a residential zone. Our clients don't want that. So they'll have one central location. It's far away from the residential as we can get. And that will be collected by one vendor. And every tenant will have access, either a code or a key, so they can get in there. It will be enclosed, so it'll be locked up, so you don't have those strangers that arrive on the site when nobody's around and want to put trash in it. And they also have a provision in their leases where the tenants cannot bring material generated off-site. For example, if they're a contractor that rehabilitates buildings, a small contractor, for example, and they have to remove windows or doors. They don't want them to come back here and fill up the dumpsters, so that would be precluded. They'll also have a camera system for the internal network, and one camera will be directed right at the trash, so they'll know who's not locking it if they need to lock it, and also if somebody is using it without authorization or they're using it for off-site materials, a demolition material or whatever. They don't want any trash around the site, and they're going to be controlling that. Also, with respect to storage, which can be a problem on other sites that we've seen, observed, we did a tour of the area, and so we have accommodated storage for longer vehicles, even with a trailer. We have those designated areas. They can also store them inside their building. But if somebody wants to store it outside, other than in the designated spaces we have in our plan, for example, the large 10 by 30 ones and stuff, other than those that they are renting as part of their unit, the only other spaces where somebody might be able to use them is if the tenant mix at the time, and we're talking on a temporary basis, the tenant mix at the time is such that we have a surplus of parking, so that they routinely see there are 5 spaces available all the time. For that period of time, because it can change, the tenant mix can change, they'll temporarily authorize them to put, for example, a trailer. And it can't be, in the lease it will be such that they can't be interfering with the other spaces on either side of it or go into the driveway to interfere with other traffic. So only something like that, a trailer, what have you, maybe a generator on that can be trailed, that can be moved. So that type of thing, but that's only if they observe a surplus of spaces at that time, and it'll only be for a temporary basis. So without authorization, it won't be allowed and be strictly enforced. Let's see what else we have here. Okay. Oh, and one other thing, if there is ever an occurrence where a tenant doesn't like the fact that they're restricted by our centralized dumpster location and they want another one outside, there's only one way they can do that. First, they have to get in writing from the landlord and agree to it with the design. Second thing is it has to go to the town has to agree to it. So there will be no other dumpster locations on the site unless they're approved by the town and by the landlord in writing. Let's see. Okay, with respect to the buffer, We discussed this also with the Wetlands Commission. It came up in discussions. The idea is, of course, we have to do the water quality basins first. It's always first, strip the site, and then you have to excavate the basins and stabilize them with vegetation, et cetera. And then the extra material will be moved over to the other side of the site for use for the development. By the way, the site is, it's all sand. It's beautiful sand material. I know even Jeff Folger represented that at one of the meetings, but it's, and our logs indicate that, but it's beautiful sand. So we can use that on site for the development. We don't think we're going to have to import any material. We think that's the case. And if there is a little extra, everybody will want it because it's beautiful sand. So we are, our client has agreed. You want Dan to represent that? He will, but he's agreed to a number of factors, including some of the things I've been representing so far, and I have other things to talk about. But he and his other members of his LLC have agreed that they will, before they start erecting the buildings, the walls going up in buildings, that type of thing, they will install the buffer. So we have to do a little bit of grading beforehand, probably have to put in the swale between building 3 and the buffer first, but they will do that before the buffer will be installed, which is challenging for watering it, for the landscape contractor. There'll be a challenge, but they have agreed to do that, to install the buffer first so it gets growing before they even start the buildings. Let's see. The Home Depot has a solar bubbler. They're not particularly expensive, but they keep the water going in the 2 basins. So they're, that's being done at the Home Depot, for example, that the beautiful little pond out front, that they did it, so keep the water going and stuff for insect control. The basins will have a park-like plantings, as Glenn will get into. As for traffic, the traffic will go to and from Route 5 primarily. Some people will take a left down Nutmeg Road South. Some people take a right up Nutmeg Road South. But we anticipate very low traffic volume from this facility, minimal, and also the traffic volumes even at peak power periods are low. Just a peak period to let you know. And the AM peak, which is 7 to 9, 25 vehicles will enter the site and 9 will exit. And most of them will go out to the light at South Satellite and Route 5. And the PM peak is entering, is 13 entering and 27 exiting during the peak hour. And we don't, most of these businesses operate during conventional business hours. Sometimes they get a little bit, their contractors stuff, they make it a little bit start a little bit earlier, but we're not anticipating overnight use facilities for the most part. I have some concluding remarks, but I'll leave those till later. But what we'd like to do is get into Jim Otis, our professional engineer. I'd like to review 2 things. That's the overall civil engineering for a project and also study that Jeff Doolittle had requested of the Newbury Brick Watershed.
Good evening. For the record, my name is James Otis. I'm a Connecticut licensed professional engineer at Close, Jensen & Miller in Wethersfield. I'm here tonight to help present what the team did in terms of utility and drainage design since DPI's, the Connecticut PE of record, is not here. In terms of utilities, the proposed water, sanitary sewer, natural gas, electric, and telecommunication utilities will run east from the end of the existing cul-de-sac. This doesn't work on the TV. From the existing cul-de-sac, those utilities run underground east along the entrance road, just south of buildings 1, 2, and 3. Potable water service and fire service will be per MDC standards. 1 fire hydrant is proposed near the southwest corner of Building 2, and there's also an existing hydrant in the cul-de-sac. Sanitary service will be provided through a 6-inch PVC gravity pipe, and electric and telecommunications will also be buried underground. They won't be overhead. Regarding on-site storm drainage, stormwater runoff from the site will be conveyed to 2 proposed water quality basins, which you can see up on the screen, which I'll call the North Basin towards the top of the image, and the West Basin, which is on the left side near the cul-de-sac. Both of these basins will help treat stormwater runoff, attenuate peak outflow from the site, and provide or enhance wetland functions. The North Basin is larger than the West Basin because the North Basin accepts runoff from a larger drainage area. Flow into the North Basin will be primarily by sheet flow from the parking lot, from a proposed yard drain at the north end of Building 2, and a proposed swale behind Building 3. Flow into the West Basin will be from 3 proposed catch basins in the entrance driveway and from sheet flow around Building 1. Flow out of the North and West Basins will be conveyed to an existing storm drainage and maintenance easement along the north property line before flowing off-site. DPI designed the 2 water quality basins to detain stormwater and modulate peak flow rates from the site for the 2, 10, 25, and 100-year frequency storm events, such that peak flow rates from the developed site will be less than or equal to the existing pre-development peak flow rates from this site as it stands today. The 2 water quality basins will also function as settling basins during construction. Best management practices in the application to control erosion and sedimentation in accordance with the Connecticut guidelines for soil erosion and sedimentation control include the use of silt fence, temporary diversion swales with stone check dams, catch basins with temporary silt sack inlet protection, riprap slope protection at drainage pipe outfalls, a construction exit tracking pad supplemented by street sweeping as required, temporary and permanent vegetation. In terms of off-site drainage, DPI submitted a supplemental drainage analysis to the town engineer for Newberry Brook, dated June 2nd, 2023. And this report was submitted in response to the town's request for information on the potential impacts of this project on downstream culverts. DPI analyzed the watershed draining to the Main Street culvert on Newberry Brook and concluded in its analysis report signed by Andrew Krar, PE, that there is an existing issue with the operation of the culvert conveying Newberry Brook under Main Street, and the proposed conditions for the subject application at 75 Connecticut Avenue will not exacerbate this existing culvert problem at Main Street. In conclusion, I'm going to wrap up my presentation. I did see a copy of the town engineer's June 12, 2023 memo with comments on this application, and DPI is in the process of responding to those comments in writing. But in the meantime, from my first look at those, it appears to me that the town engineer's comments 7 and 8 support DPI's Newberry Brook analysis report conclusions about the existing Main Street culvert. Thank you.
So Steve Fleshman of Steve Fleshman Architect in Brimfield, Massachusetts is here to present the architectural aspects. Steve?
So while Glenn finds the architectural floor plans, I'll introduce myself. My name's Stephen Fleshman. I'm a registered architect in Connecticut as well as 13 other states. My office is in Brimfield, Massachusetts. And I've done a significant number of industrial style buildings. I actually worked for the company that was the process engineering company for Carlos Fosta.
Yeah.
So is
Yeah.
it not quite picking me up?
You can move that a little closer
Can
to
I
you.
do that? Okay, is that a little better?
Yes, that's much
Okay.
better. Thank you.
Would you like me to repeat that, or did everybody get that? No, everybody good?
I'm good.
So the buildings, as we mentioned, there are 4 buildings on the site. They range in size from the largest being 15,000 square feet to the smallest being 3,600 square feet, which I believe this is building 1 of the west. This one's about 9,000 square feet. They are very simple structures. They are pre-engineered buildings with concrete slabs, single story. They have an eave height of 22 feet, which would be where your gutter line is. And they have a varying height of the ridge, depending on how deep they are based on the pitch. And I can go through each of those. So this building will be very similar to all the others. Each unit will have a small office space and a restroom for an employee or staff that's there. And then the rest of the space is flexible space to be used, whether it's storage, prep for the day's work, such things as that. Let's see if can I click the next one there, Glenn? Because I don't see it. Okay, gotcha. Scroll works, okay, perfect. So this would be the elevation for Building 1. This one has 3 tenant spaces and has actually 2 12 by 14 foot overhead doors in each space, as well as personnel doors. And depending on the size of the space will dictate the number of man doors or personnel doors you need to meet the egress requirements per the building code. In this case, we have 2 in each of the spaces based on their size. The construction of this building would be a metal skin, vertical ribbed siding, and it would have a standing seam metal roof system. And we had proposed some colors. We went before design review. We're trying to have a color that would blend in the best we could. Upon their recommendation, they asked us to go from more of a dark color that was a neutral color to more of a light gray color with a darker gray trim color. And that trim color would just be the gutters, the eaves, and any other trim around. The doors themselves are all white. Went the wrong way. So here's building 2, the center building, as you can see, same configuration. Single office, single restroom, and small space. One thing I did want to mention, the eave height that we had selected was driven by the fact that in the event someone needed the flexibility to add a small mezzanine inside the space, there would be adequate headroom at the upper level if they put a small mezzanine in for part storage or similar type of uses. There we go. So as you can see, this building's a little deeper because it's back to back. Just a few notes on the eave heights are identical in every building. The ridge height varies from the highest, which is this building at 26 feet 3 inches, to the lowest of 23 foot 4. And to give you a comparison, I think the zone allows us to have 40 foot for a height. We were trying to be sensitive to the residential neighborhood in the sense that a single-family home with 2 stories would be in the range of 18 to 20 feet above the first floor. Then if you have a 6 in 12 pitch, the ridge height is going to be in the 27, 29 feet. So our buildings are lower than most 2-story single-family residential buildings versus the 40-foot maximum that is allowed in the zone. Now I'm going the other way. Oh, so this is the east building. This was the property, the building that abuts the residential. One thing we were very sensitive of was not to place any doors or windows adjacent to the residential zones. All the exit doors, man doors, everything are on the driveway side, so there are no doors, windows, anything located on the residential side. And that's the case for both Building 3 and Building 4. As you can see here on the bottom elevation, there is no windows, it's just the flat wall. Building 4, which is on the south, this is the smallest, 3,600 square foot, again, the single office, single restroom configuration. This was the original color scheme that we presented with the darker colors, trying to feel that it would blend in with the landscaping and such, but as recommended by the design review, to go to a lighter color. And I'm going to see if I can get to that. We've updated that. There we go. So much more neutral, less visually impacting type of facade. I know Glenn will get into the lighting. All lighting on the building is located on the driveway side. There's nothing on the residential side. We are required to have egress lighting over the man doors by the building code, and then there will be wall packs which will provide the general lighting, and I think Glenn will get into more detail on the foot candles and such. I do have a couple of real color samples. Computers don't always replicate what we're trying to replicate accurately. So I don't know if the commission would like to have these. I can note these and provide them for your further review of the colors that we're looking. We are looking at 2 or 3 different metal building manufacturers, so the final color would be similar, may not be the exact of a new core product, but it'll be a very similar color in the gray neutral range. So I think that's it. So I think Jim would be next.
Yes. Jim Aldrich, the owner of Aldrich Construction in Manchester. He's the general contractor.
Yep.
He's going to be discussing even energy.
If you could provide those samples to...
I want to just note the colors.
Okay, thank you.
Get more. Thank you. My name is James Aldrich, Aldrich Construction, based in Manchester, Connecticut. They've asked me to speak about energy efficiency. I can really tell you tonight things we're thinking about. We're not even certain we're going to be approved by planning and zoning. We don't know who our tenants are going to be, but the things that we're considering for the buildings, the first thing is what we are definitely going to do. The height of the building is 22-foot eave height, and the pitch is 1 foot vertical for every 12 feet horizontal. That was done on purpose so that we can install solar panels or have the roof solar panel ready. And that would be solar electric or solar hot water. Also, the 22-foot eave height is low enough that a standard contractor's ladder of 28 feet, you can get up there if you want to maintain your solar panels. And the pitch is such that on the east plane or the west plane, you can still get a reasonable solar panel efficiency, and the critical times for power for solar panels is 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Heating the inside of the building, we do have gas on the site, and historically, gas is half the cost per BTU of energy compared to electric. But there's been significant changes in technology really in the past 5 years. And heat pumps have incredibly increased their efficiency, and they're becoming more competitive, and it's a significant growing part of the market. So we could use, they have heat pump hot water heaters, and they are 4 times as efficient as the old electric hot water heaters, and the cost benefit for using those instead of gas-powered units is considerable, and again, it depends on the total hot water demand you have. These tenants, I'll use an example. Dan Rosso, the owner, is an expert, and there's more and more businesses as they grow, they're home-based. They need to go someplace and they store. And I'm a contractor, so I have many examples of people that started off as a one electrical firm, and they grew to multiple people, and all of a sudden the house isn't good enough. But they need a base camp to keep their trucks and to store some of their equipment and parts that they buy in bulk. But usually, most of their men go right to the job. It's too inefficient for a contractor to have his men meet at the shop every day, pick up their stuff and go home. You're usually assigned to a job, and you go right to the job, and you leave the job at the end of the day and go home. But it is a place that they have their own little warehouse. So some of those folks might not need much office space. We've designed office space as the minimum, but there's room we could make it bigger. There may be 1 or 2 people need in the office. We can't commit to that today. Also, many contractors, they don't need a temperature of 70 degrees on the inside of their shop. We are going to be a very energy efficient building with the new insulation standards that are considerably more. 10 years ago, we were using 4 inches of insulation in the walls and 4 inches in the roof. Then it went to 4 inches in the wall, 6 inches in the roof. The new energy code is 4 inches is R11, 2 layers of R13 in the walls, which is about 8 inches, and R30 in the roof compared to what used to be R11. So for the new energy codes, matter of fact, we can't cram any more insulation into the walls and the roof with the new code they've passed. But some of these folks aren't going to need any heat in their shops at all, only in the office area. So depending upon their needs, they may prefer to have a hybrid heat pump system, or they may prefer to have gas. We can't commit today to what we're going to do on the project. Solar hot water and solar electric. The key to having solar in the future is the weight of the panels. And it's not only the weight of the panels, you have to ballast them for uplift. A roof is designed for 30 pounds a square foot for snow load. That's the big load. If you want to put solar panels on your roof, you have to upsize your steel for an extra 10 pounds per square foot. Also means your footings and foundations have to be heftier so you can put solar panels on in the future. The owner has agreed that all their buildings will be designed so that in the future they can add solar panels. And the state has different incentive programs based on usage, but there's been some shortage of funding, and there's also now a lottery system if you want to compete for those. So we have the provisions, but it's not a guarantee. I can't give you any commitments if they're going to be in every single unit. I think that's a recap of what we have for energy efficiency.
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, I'm Glenn Martin with DPI. licensed landscape architect, and I'll talk to you about the landscaping for the project. We're providing shade trees within the landscape islands and the proposed parking areas. These trees will be honey locusts and red maples. The red maples and honey locusts will provide flowers which attract pollinators. We're also proposing 2 river birch trees adjacent to the north water quality basin. And that would be those 2 right there. These trees will provide pollen and also seeds for wildlife. We're also providing evergreen shrubs along the building foundations at the front of the buildings. So all the front of the buildings will have evergreen shrubs as ornamental shrubs. And also evergreen shrubs over near the dumpster area, which will be enclosed with a 8-foot-high solid wood fence and gate to screen the dumpster. Along the road, we are providing 4 pin oaks. These trees will help screen the development from Connecticut Avenue, and those will be located right here. The water quality basins located on the west and north will be seeded with a native seed mix. The seed mix will be provided all around the basins on the slopes and also on the slope between the 2 basins. So even on that area, we'll have some native seed mix. The seed mix has a variety of wildflowers, sedges, and grasses. The seed mix will include many plants for pollinator habitat. It also provides a seed food source for other wildlife. Both basins will have plantings around the perimeter of the basins where there will be a shallow water depth. So the darker green area around each basin is that area which has a shallow water depth. And these plants are suited for wet areas. And these plants will provide habitat for insects and birds. The basin slopes adjacent to the wetland edge will be planted with several native shrubs. So the area along here and then along there, close to the wetlands, will be planted with these native shrubs. These shrubs will include northern bayberry, black chokeberry, and sweet pepperbush. These shrubs will be beneficial to pollinators and also good food source for birds. Many service berries, which are small flowering trees, are also provided around the basins. So again, in that same area, we're providing the service berry flowering trees. These trees provide additional flowers for pollinators and berries for birds. We are providing an evergreen screen of 68 arborvitae along the edge of the 50-foot buffer. So starting up here, going along here along the buffer, continuing all the way to the end right here, we'll have the 68 arborvitaes. These will be planted in phase 1 of the project to screen the development from the neighboring properties. These are green giant arborvitae, which can grow up to 50 feet tall and 20 feet wide. They grow at a fast rate up to 3 feet per year. An approximate 10-foot wide swath within the buffer along the edge will be cleared in order to plant the arborvitae. This will allow more sunlight to reach the arborvitae for better growth. And also, though, this arborvitae is a shade-tolerant variety. It's also deer-resistant. All the existing trees within the 50-foot buffer will be assessed by a licensed arborist, landscape architect, and town staff to determine if any trees need to be removed for the safety of the neighbors. The arborvitae planted along the buffer will offer nesting habitat for birds and seeds as a wildlife food source. We are also interplanting native mountain laurel and rhododendrons among the existing trees within the buffer. So within the entire buffer area, we'll be planting those additional shrubs. These evergreen shrubs will provide additional screening of the development from the neighbors and cover for wildlife. Both shrubs also provide flowers for pollinators. The interplanted evergreen shrub locations can be adjusted during installation within the buffer with the help of the landscape contractor, landscape architect, and town staff to determine the most appropriate locations for shrubs to avoid the existing vegetation. Also, a proposed curvilinear walking trail is proposed through the buffer area, which is also a walking trail easement, which Peter had mentioned. The walking trail and easement also extend out toward Connecticut Avenue. So the trail would begin here. There's a narrow easement here, then it widens out to 50 feet here, and the walking trail would continue along, connecting to an existing trail, which is in that location. Trail signs are proposed to help direct people along the trail. And yes, and the next thing would be lighting I'll cover. A few light poles are proposed at the entrance drive and in the rear parking area. So along entrance drive, we have one light about there, and then another proposed light right up there, and a few more in the back. These fixtures will have a slim modern profile and be 25 feet high. They are also full cutoff fixtures. Lighting wall packs are also proposed on the buildings to light the parking and driveway. These will also be full cutoff fixtures and have slim profile. No light fixtures are proposed on the rear of the buildings, which are adjacent to the east and south property lines. So no lighting is proposed at the back of the buildings. Next, I'll go to the cross sections, which are in your plan set. Cross-section AA goes through Building 4 on the south side and continues an existing house on Barber Road. The house is approximately 172 feet from proposed Building 4. The cross-section shows the approximate 5-year height and the mature height of the proposed arborvitae and evergreen shrubs. So eventually, the arborvitaes will be 50 feet tall. And the building itself are just under 24 feet at the ridge line. Cross-section BB goes through Building 3 on the east side of the hub and extends through an existing house on Judy Lane. Building 3 is approximately 209 feet from the existing house. This cross-section also shows the, again, it shows the approximate height of the shrubs and arborvitae, which again would be 50 feet tall against the about a 24-foot ridge line. And also, the distance between the house on the corner here is 146 feet to the nearest building. Just wanted to note that. And that's all I have. I'll turn it now back over to Peter DeMalley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. So let me just do a few concluding remarks, and I just want to repeat that, as we mentioned early on, Dan Rosso, our client, is here from Trio Properties. He is a town resident. His office has been in South Windsor as well, at Wentworth Park. That's the second section off of Felt Road. So he's been here for a while. He's been involved in giving back. He's a member of South Windsor Rotary Club. They're a very generous club throughout the town, what they do. I know I'm appreciative of some of the things they do, giving back. And he also is has a lot of experience in primarily industrial development, does other types of development, even though he's here in South Windsor, and a lot of it's been outside of town. But he even specializes in taking unproductive, non-productive, even vacant industrial properties and giving them a new life, cleaning them up, fixing them up, and putting new tenants in them and stuff, and keeping good control over the properties. He does a lot of experience of that. So he knows what it's like having a property even years down, away from when it's built, and how you maintain those. Even though most of the properties he owns right now, he did not build originally. They're built by others, and they get in a less desirable state. But then he restores them and brings them back. But he knows what they can be like. That's one reason why we have addressed a lot of these issues associated with what do you do about dumpsters, you know, and why we only have one central location. It's not a big site. It's not inconvenient to people in this commercial development, but we don't want to have them all over the place. We don't want to have a whole variety of refuse collectors. They're coming in, trash companies are coming in, and having different schedules, and it's happening all day and every day, that type of thing, if you have 26 units. We want to have one vendor coming in taking care of the development, and in hours that they can schedule, so they have control over it. They're going to have cameras to make sure people aren't abusing these 3 8-yard dumpsters that are on the site in the enclosure. This use is a permitted use. Dan and his partners selected this site because they looked at the master plan for the community, POCD, and saw that it was industrial, and it's been industrial for decades. They saw there was part of it in its existing industrial park that's mostly been developed. They saw that they thought that it could do a layout. They saw other plans for other conceptual plans for this site. I've been involved in some of them that were larger buildings, taller buildings, more intensive development, and they're at I think it was just under 34% impervious coverage. They wanted low-profile buildings. They were sensitive to the neighbors. They've done all kinds of things. They took out their checkbook so that they could take care of this site and keep it clean and operational, good, effective operational status, but also that they could be sensitive to the neighbors. And they didn't want to waste their time on a site, on a particular use that would waste your time and their time. They want to do something that's approvable and it's allowed use. So they've been sensitive to that, and that's why they selected the site and they bought it last year. The buffer design is for a natural screening. You know, you mentioned, I think there are 120 evergreen shrubs. I've got some in my yard, evergreen, rhododendron and mountain laurel. I got mine in my yard, or rhododendron just finished blossoming, and they're big. And then the mountain laurel, even taller than that. I've got some about 12 feet high. I've got some smaller ones at foundation plantings, but they're in blossom right now. They get white blossoms, and they're beautiful. And they grow, and they're deer resistant, both those species. So we selected that. And we've got, you know, I think it's 68 large arborvitaes, and as he indicated, they're deer resistant, because that's been a problem for arborvitae. I've seen the browse line from deer, and this is deer resistant species, and also they grow a lot bigger than the regular arborvitae. They go up to 50 feet tall. So Glenn's been educating us about that. He's a professional licensed landscape architect and knows his plant species, plant materials. So then also, you know, we're sensitive to the design of the buildings. Steve and Jim Aldrich, Steve Fleshman and Jim Aldrich came up with, working with what Dan and his partners wanted to do, came up with a really good design and sensitive to neighbors. There's nothing in the back. So you're not going to have a door that's left open and sound protrudes out over the lawn. We're not going to have that stuff. We're not going to have windows that are left open so somebody can hear things going on inside a building. And you're not going to have any light that's permeating into the neighborhood. There's going to be no lighting adjacent to the neighborhoods between the buildings and the neighbors' lots. The basin designs, as the Wetlands Commission indicated, they really liked it, that the wetlands will become better wetlands that we're leaving, even though we're not disturbing them, because of what we're doing next to them. Those two water quality basins are fabulous. Then not only do they treat the water quality for the site runoff, but they also would create a more dynamic environment. Both the wetlands area, the wetlands area will become more dynamic, greater species of wildlife and insect life, what have you, birds. And the same thing where the water quality basins are, the two basins. It's a real robust planning plan. Take a look at it. There's all kinds of pollinators in there, flowering trees, and place for nesting for birds and other species can cohabitate. So we're taking that area and make it a lot better, and it's even enhancing the wetlands itself. While at the same time we're having a development of commercial type development. We have done a report at the request of Mr. Doolittle, and we've looked at Newbury Brook, the overall watershed from the culvert underneath Main Street and its impact down there, and we're not having an impact on it. I think that's the basic conclusion by our engineers, as Mr. Otis presented tonight. He didn't go into detail in it, but it's an in-depth report, and bottom line is we're not affecting it, and the engineering report backs that up. We've made a commitment, our clients have made a commitment for the buffer to be installed prior to the buildings going up. They may have to put the footing and foundation in first, but the walls are not going to go up until the buffer planting is intact and has been installed. And the contractor, of course, will have to keep it alive as required, and it'll be bonded. The swale is going to be on the property is going to be maintained as necessary by Mr. Rosso and his partners. And they also have agreed with the Wetlands Commission to make sure they maintain the water quality basins. Those as well, they're performing. A letter was submitted to this commission from Hale Realty, which is essentially Constitution Landing, the industrial park ownership, and they've already authorized Mr. Aldrich to do some repairs on the existing basin that serves that whole development. And there's there are plant species in there. What are we talking about? The Phragmites. Yeah, the Phragmites have taken over the basin, and they're clogging up the outlet there. Mr. Aldrich has come up, and he's a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut as well. He's a pretty bright guy, and he's come up with a trash rack that he wants installed there that's been submitted to the commission. as well, and to really prevent the Phragmites material from clogging up the outlet structure for the basin. So it serves not just this development, but the whole industrial park. So you saw that they are maintaining their system, storm drain system, and they've already contracted with him, and he submitted a letter just to let you know that he's under contract to do that, and he's done it many times before. In fact, he built the basin. He had that built. He was in charge of that on behalf of Constitution Landing. And their leases are going to be strict, and they're going to be covering a whole bunch of aspects of how people are allowed to operate on the site, what they can do with their space and outside their space, and how it's strictly regulated about whatever is parked outside, and including any equipment they might want to have around. Because we have seen that on other sites where they have storage outside of materials and stuff like that. That's going to be strictly regulated, so it doesn't become a problem. And one other thing is, we've noticed, and our clients notice, that there, you need to maintain your site. You need to restripe it. I know at our office we just did that. You need to stripe it every 5 to 10 years. It fades away. And a lot of these sites around town, you just don't see any striping. You don't even know where the parking spaces are. And we couldn't even tell if there are any spaces for large vehicles. So this is a unique property. This is going to be state-of-the-art. From a building construction perspective, from energy's perspective, as we're looking to do, landscaping perspective, accommodating larger vehicles on this site where they're not accommodated on most other sites, and that it'll be basically state-of-the-art and also be sensitive to the neighborhood. So they've done what they can do, and we're available for any questions from the commission or from staff. We look forward to staff comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll turn to our town staff, our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Thank you, and I did send this report out in your packets. I'll kind of do an abridged version. I know we have public that would like to comment tonight. So this is a request for a site plan approval for approximately 39,850 square feet of flex industrial space, showing 4 buildings on property located at 75 Connecticut Ave in our industrial zone. The site size is 6.44 acres. As indicated, they're showing 26 individual units, which range in size. Each unit will be self-contained with an office and a bathroom. This is a permitted use in our industrial zone. All the zoning requirements have been met. We're showing impervious coverage of 34.6%. We allow up to 65%. They're exceeding our parking requirements, showing some spaces in reserve as well. There are other spaces not counted inside of the buildings that can count as additional parking if needed. They have provided the provisions for the EV charging spaces as required in our regulations. A pretty aggressive landscape plan has been submitted, both interior landscaping and the water quality basins, as well as the buffer. I would comment that this plan was submitted prior to the adoption of the new regulations, so it is a 50-foot buffer that is required. They are showing that with a planting plan of giant green arborvitaes right at the 50-foot line, interplanting in the 50-foot area with rhododendron and mountain laurel plantings. I did appreciate the comment that staff, as well as an arborist, will go out there prior to tree removal or not to assess the trees to make sure that trees we do leave behind are healthy trees and will survive. There is cross-sections on CLS3 of the landscape plan, which shows to require cross-sections at the planting 5-year and then again at maturity. Another feature that was talked about is the trail system that is included in the plan. This goes back to a 2000 subdivision approval of Constitution Landing with the concept of connecting Talbot Lane down to Connecticut Ave. So a phase of this was done with Carlos Pasta. This is again in the deed for this property. It was an easement put in place back in 2000, and so they are showing how they're going to establish the pathway with a natural surface, mark the trail, and provide annual maintenance of the trail. They have provided outdoor lighting. As was indicated, there's a couple of parking lot lights that will be 25 feet in height. Other than that, there'll be some pack lighting on the buildings and security lighting at the doors. They are proposing no lighting to the rear of the buildings. I think it's 1, 3, and 4, which are those buildings that face the residential area. And as mentioned, their building height will be 25 feet. We do allow up to 40 in the zone. There are no windows being proposed on the easterly or southerly building, again, facing the residential area. Design Review did review this application on May 4th. They did comment on the darkness of the building and requested the applicant do go to a lighter color. They thought that would blend in better, even though there will be a significant landscaping. They thought up front, having it lighter would be a better call. So they did recommend the fox gray color with a trim, and we can send these around. They have been marked for the commission's review, and they did forward a favorable review. As indicated by Mr. Demali, there is only one dumpster on site. The applicant has indicated if they have roll-off dumpsters, they would be kept inside of the building and not would show up on other areas of site, so I'll take their word for that. There are no rooftop units being proposed with this application at this time. There's also no areas for outdoor storage. Just a point of clarification, we define outdoor storage as anything that's not vehicle ready. So if it's a trailer that's ready to go, we don't define that as outdoor storage. If, as is common with these sites around town, they do end up areas that they are creating outdoor storage, we do require that to be screened. And we've talked to the applicant about, a change order process or something. However, they don't intend to have outdoor storage at this time. Both the fire marshal and the fire chief reviewed these plans and the templates provided and were satisfied that they had access around the site. There are regulated wetlands on site, and the Wetlands Agency approved this application on May 17th. They are requiring bonds in the amount of $25,000 for erosion sedimentation control, $50,000 for the installation of the stormwater structures, $20,000 for the installation success of wetlands plantings. Other requirements of the approval include the elimination of the Phragmites stand within the northern swale and proposed perimeter arborvitae plantings to be installed prior to the approval of the building permits. Both public and water and sewer are available to this site. Water Pollution Control Authority approval is required. And the only comment I have left from planning is I'd like to work with the applicant on the actual building numbering and unit numbering so that we can get those numbers put on any final plans that are approved by the commission. That concludes staff comments. Thank you.
Okay,
planning comments.
Thank you very much. We'll turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a few comments on the revised plans. The northern detention basin has both detentions have a riprap spillway and a outlet structure. I suggested the elevation of the riprap spillway in the northern detention basin be lowered to just above 100-year flood elevation because as it was shown, it looked like it was a little bit high. And the outlet structure could be lowered to, again, about half a foot over that elevation. The storm drainage system maintenance operation plan indicates that the detention basins will be inspected 4 times a year. The outlet structures should also be inspected 4 times a year when those basins are inspected. You heard about the condition of the adjacent wetlands. I won't go over that. WPCA review and approval is needed for this application. And just some other comments in them that don't necessarily need to be addressed, but I want them on the record. The 3 leak-offs from the paved parking areas to the detention basins have low spots in them where there will be water ponding before it spills into the basins and after the rainstorm, so there'll be a little bit of water right off the pavement just before the basins. And according to the Stormwater Management Report, the water from both detention basins will back up into the outlet pipes from the flared ends during the extended storms, 25 to 100-year storms. It does pass the 10-year storm, so this may reduce surface drainage on site and allow some sediment to accumulate in these pipes during the large storm, and the applicant should be aware of that. As far as the Newberry Brook watershed analysis, I did ask that they do that, and I appreciate that. I wish they had indicated when they would do that. I was not contacted by any of the engineers involved in that process. In reviewing that analysis, I do agree that the analysis shows that there'll be no increase in peak flows at the Main Street culvert and Newberry Brook downstream of this site for any of the storm events. And the model further shows that the peak flows arrive at the Main Street culvert and Newberry Brook in about 3 hours, but more than 15 hours from this site. So the peak flow from this site will be much later than the peak flow arrives in Newberry Brook. Again, that will not contribute to more water at the Newberry Brook culvert. They did show photographs to show the Newberry Brook culvert mostly submerged during a heavy rainstorm at the end of May, 2-inch rainstorm, and then a day later, still mostly submerged, but a little bit of the culvert shown. The photos show the water level visible at both the downstream and the upstream and about the same level. Peter indicated in the report said this indicates there's an operational problem with the culvert. I disagree with that. I don't think there's an operational culvert with the culverts. I think water just backs up in Newbury Brook. If you go downstream of Main Street, Newbury Brook flattens out, it goes through the floodplain. There's very little flow that goes through that brook. Last week I went down to Vibert Road where Newbury Brook crosses it, and there was no water flowing. There's water in the brook, but it's in a marsh area. It's just standing water at this point. So I think that's why it's slow to drain through Main Street, but in all the time I've been here, Main Street is not flooded at Newbury Brook, or rarely flooded, even when the brook is backed up. So it just, the marsh west of that absorbs water, but also holds it and keeps it from flowing for extended periods of time. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we will turn to members of the public. And my thinking, commissioners, is we have other business we want to act on tonight. I'd like to limit the input tonight to say like 9:30 or 9:45 at the latest, and continue the public hearing if we have additional public input past those times. Is this just?
Just a letter for the record.
Okay.
Got it.
Great, thank you. Okay, so at this time, I'll open it up to the members of the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. Anyone? Hearing and seeing none. Is there anyone who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? Please step forward.
Richard DeLay, 95 Cody Circle. Good evening, Commissioners. I would like to just get a few things on the record. Application 23-11P was received by the Planning and Zoning Commission for a self-named industrial flex development on March 14th, 2023. I've included a copy of the legal notices for the IWAC public hearing for the application 23-11P, where the community was informed of a proposed development at 75 Connecticut Ave of cold storage units. Also included is the legal notice for the IWAC approval of the same application, 23-11P, but this time the public was notified of approved self-storage units. Either way, the underlying IWAC approval is for storage, which aligns directly with the permitted use of a warehouse, as confirmed by the new illustrated book of development definitions per zoning regulation 10.2.b. Though the exact same development, the storage terminology has been wiped from the Planning and Zoning Commission's public hearing legal notice, and only flex space is included. This application allows for the proposed building and its units to be utilized in a variety of permitted uses, to include warehousing, hence the definition flex. However, there is a moratorium in place to receive applications for developments with a warehouse use regardless of its size. Besides not being representative of the development's potential use, moving forward with the application would make the IWAC legal notices misleading at best, and its approval in conflict with planning and zoning regardless of your decision. The application must be returned to the applicant without action and resubmitted when the commission is accepting applications for developments that may be used as a warehouse. So you can be inexact with many things, but you cannot with legal notices. What stops me, once this is built, from renting a unit and using it as a warehouse? Absolutely nothing. It's flexible space. I just want clarity. What is the permitted use that they're requesting? Like, here's a list of permitted uses. Flex space, industrial is zone. It's not a permitted use. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Please step forward.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'll sign in here in a second. John Howazak, Cody Circle. I'm conflicted on this one. On the one hand, a small business incubator to me sounds very attractive. As my wife is aware, I have this crazy dream that I'll get an early retirement offer from my employer and I'll actually go and start a business. And so whenever I hear about small business incubators, I get pretty excited. Not going to go on about it tonight. What really happened was several weeks ago, several residents on Barbara Lane and Judy Lane approached me and they said, this is being built in our backyards. What can we do about it? And I said to them, you know, it's industrial land, they bought it, they own it, they have rights to develop it, explained all that. But the week before, I had been reviewing some documents, and they showed me the site plan, and I said, wait a minute, I think I've seen a map on that before. And I had, and it was kind of in my records, and I printed it out on as large a piece of paper as I could here. So we'll just pass them out here. So for the record, what's being passed out is a map of Carla's Pasta, 50 Talbot Lane, dated on or about January of 2015, boundary and topographic survey, sheet V-02 by Design Professionals. And what stood out at me at this map was that there were markings on the map for a conservation easement. And I guess once you all have it, I kind of circled it in yellow. The conservation easement is a good deal wider than the walking trail easement. And so, you know, on the one hand, I'm excited. I mean, I'm a taxpayer just like all of you. More tax space is good. Industrial flex space is good. I think you'll hear from other neighbors on what we as residents of Judy Lane and Edgewood Drive and Cody Circle have to deal with the current industrial flex space. On the other side of Carla's Pasta, there's, I think there's a car stereo place there and a window tinting place, and they do car stereo testing up right until 10 o'clock at night, most nights, or at least weekend nights. And luckily, Carla's Pasta is 120 feet tall, some of the sound's reflected, so it's not so bad on Cody Circle, but I was invited over to a party over on Barbara Lane, and I was astonished at how loud it was. Like, you couldn't talk to each other. It was almost being like in a, not quite a disco, but pretty loud environment, and then right at 10 o'clock they chopped. So interesting experience. So anyway, please have a look at this map. I've presented old maps to other commissions, and hasn't seemed to matter much, but maybe it'll matter to this one. Okay. I do have a magnifying glass if you want me to pass it around. I'd like to get it back. Yes, no? No? Said no.
I'm fine, thank you.
Ms. Carey, no? Yes? Okay. And while I'm signing in, for the record, I believe the conservation easement is in volume 1192, page 254, as noted on the map that I just discussed.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Stacy Ramirez, 31 Barbara Road. Last night, I went to bed early so that I could go to work and attend this meeting that I knew was going to be running late. But that was ruined at 2 a.m. when the dumpsters were being emptied on South Satellite Road. Saturday, I tried going to bed early, but that was ruined at 9 o'clock when the car stereo place decided to start their music, even though their business says that they close at 7 p.m. These are only a few of the issues our neighborhood deals with and have complained about for so long, but no one listens. We hear the constant noise from cars on Route 5, which sometimes can sound like you're at the Daytona 500. That will only be 1,000 times worse if 6 acres of trees are bulldozed. We still have 25 Talbot Lane in the shadows, and now we are being dealt another blow. Another useless building taking over beautiful green space and encroaching on people's homes. Many people have sold their homes since 25 Talbot started, and now another one has hit the market today. Edgewood Drive alone has had 8 houses sold. 4 of them have been since March, when this new development was put into place. People who have lived here for over 40 years are now left helpless and scrambling to get out before more noise and eyesores potentially come into our neighborhood. I am left to wonder if the people buying these homes are aware of what is potentially to come. There are already numerous spaces for lease in our town. Why do we need 26 more to add to it? A couple things that I wanted to point out real quick about the dumpsters. These dumpsters, for instance, behind me on South Satellite and Nutmeg, they come just like this morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30. As much as they're gonna tell you what you wanna hear, they're not gonna have a say in when these dumpsters are being emptied. They're gonna come when they wanna come and when they have time to come and be emptied. They're not gonna care what they have to say, unfortunately, and I've called the town, I've called the police station, I've called USA, and nothing has been done. I've been there for 14 years, so you can only imagine the amount of times I have called. When they talk about the tenants, plumbers, this and that, the bottom line, they're gonna tell you what you wanna hear. They don't know who is gonna rent that space. They're gonna build the building and then they're gonna put up a for lease sign. They don't know who's coming in there. They're just gonna tell you what you wanna hear. Did the people who leased out the car stereo place to these people, did they think that there was gonna be music played till all hours of the night, every day? No. Their business hours say 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. But at 9 o'clock at night, they start. So what are conventional hours? Who's to say another car stereo place doesn't want to go in there and say, oh, we're just going to be installing car stereos, nothing else? You know, last year in front of the car stereo place, there was a blow-up swimming pool with tons of kids and adults partying on a Saturday. Now on the behind me on Nutmeg, in one of these flex spaces, there's a church back there. Loud banging of instruments and music and all this stuff. There's not enough parking spaces for them. They park all along Nutmeg, into Connecticut Ave, over to South Satellite. What's to say that doesn't happen here? And what are they gonna do when they run out of places to park? They're gonna park on Barbara Road and Edgewood and go through the woods into the trail to get into the building? This is just like a handful of things that can go wrong, and they're just gonna tell you what you wanna hear, and I understand where they're coming from, but just please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please step forward.
Where do I live? Good evening, Commissioner. Glad to see everybody again. Steve Gretsch, 155 Judy Lane. definitely disappointed that this even made it past inland wetlands. It never should have, going by their regulations. So a couple of things I want to talk about tonight, beyond that, more so as to this application.
If you could speak into the microphone once you,
Instead of walking and talking?
yes, please.
Will do.
We probably do have a mobile mic, but,
No, I just.
okay. Thank you.
Real quick. So there's been so many different plans submitted on this piece of property that, you know, the original one that we saw had actual borderlines going through residential property. So I just wanted to bring that to note. On the second one that's on here, the second map with the area in red, the measurements of the trees are completely wrong, which is indicative of the entire plan for the entire property. So when he's saying that there's a, 36 inch in diameter, when you actually have over 108 inch in diameter. So the tree space is there. If you go and you can just visually see between 45, 60, up to 85 feet trees. And that's kind of what this one's all about. I'm going to move on from that because that was quick and easy. Then we're going to move into the actual conservation easement, whereas Design Professionals was nice enough to put down a 50-foot buffer, the actual easement is 75 feet. And here's the paperwork for the easement.
Thanks.
Thank you. As you can see, this is the Commonwealth Title Company with the actual easements listed all the way through it. And if you go through the pages within, 1192, volume 1192 at page 237, South Windsor Land Records. We actually had someone go to Planning and Development. They couldn't produce these documents. The lawyer that actually produced these was glad to show them to us. So that's what you have in front of you now is the conservation easements for this property, which is 75 feet. So all of the plans that are being shown tonight have a very generous 75-foot buffer, but there is a 75-foot easement there without even speaking of the buffer. So that's what's in that one. In addition, there are some other documents in planning and development and again, additional easements, same property. There might be some duplicates from the first one in here as well.
Thanks. I had 2 copies if you need another one.
I think I'm good. I made extras.
Okay.
Again, so when you look at the plans submitted tonight, they're with 50-foot buffers. What you have are the legal easements for 75 feet, which doesn't include the 75-foot buffer of the new, after the moratorium. So you're looking at plans that are completely pointless because they don't cover what they need to. And that's about all I have for tonight, but I'd also like to ask that everything that was submitted on the inland wetlands application also be moved over to this application as well. Because there are several reasons there why this should have been denied. And that's all I've got. And I think I just stole the sign-in sheet, didn't I?
If you want something to be submitted for the record, you're really going to have to provide it. for the
Well, I
record.
tried that, but when I did electronically, somehow it got lost to planning and development.
So maybe you can get it to us for the,
Yeah, I'll do that, but I'd rather bring in printed copies, because again, when I submit to planning and development, sometimes it gets lost. Just like these easements, which we asked planning and development for, but they couldn't produce. And again, I stole your sign-in sheet, and I don't know where I put it. Well, I might have given it to one of you.
Oh. Does anybody have the sign-in sheet?
I got it.
Okay, great.
John Holisack didn't sign in, so I'm going to sign him in. Oh, no wonder why, I'm on the back, I'm sorry. It's late.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please step forward. Excuse me, your microphone is off. If you could just, no, your microphone is off. There's a button on the bottom. If you could just push it, please. It'll turn red on the stem. There it is. It's lit. Thank you very much.
My name's Robert Stoddard. I see they didn't move the board yet, but.
Robert, what's your address, please?
Huh?
Your address?
10 Barber Road, South Windsor, Connecticut.
Okay, thank you.
Well, talking about noise, I think this place is going to be a 24/7 noise problem. Now, because we got noise Saturday night, 10 o'clock. I got to turn my TV up to listen to it, to drown out this music that we hear through the woods. What's going to happen when they build this? How many feet do we got between me and you? About 22 feet? About 22 feet. And I got, I got a map of this let's talk about when they built my house. 22 feet from their property, 22 feet. The side of my house is sitting from there. Look at that arrow. That's right where my house is, that arrow. How's that? 22 feet from their property line. What was the law back in 1961 of putting a house so close to the property? 22 feet. I'm going to come out of my side of my house and look at this place. 22 feet. Now what are you looking at? 22 feet from my house to my property. I got, what, another 30 feet before these big, what you call these giant greens, 6 feet? I'm 6 feet. We're going to put a 6-foot tree in front of 22, 50 feet from the side of my house? 50 feet, man. I don't know. How can I fight this? 22 feet. You see all these other properties, the houses are the whole backyard. going up the side of the street, you know, the neighbor at the end of the street. His house is at least, oh, wait a minute, his house is next to the church. Huh. Now we gotta listen to music 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. I gotta turn my TV up. Okay, you know, they're talking about how many green giant trees are they gonna put up? My property got 5 trees within 40 feet. 5 trees. You know, I went to Home Depot, they got a 6-foot tree. Wait a minute, it's not 6 foot because I'm near, the ball's on the bottom. So 5, I mean, how fast is that tree gonna grow? I gotta look at that thing. But other than that, 22 feet. 22 feet. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? Okay. At this point, due to the hour, I'd like to have a motion to extend the public hearing to, what's our next?
Be June 27th.
June 27th.
I'd like a motion to extend this public hearing to June 27th.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Would it be possible for us to read the emails that we got about this application into the record beforehand, or do we want to wait on that?
We could, we got a few of them, Alan.
Okay.
We got one with our package, but we were given another one here tonight.
I think that's all you have is 2.
Only 2? I think we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. But he didn't really elaborate on the letter, so it would be in order to read it. Do you have? Here or here? Which one do you, I have this one, which is from Steve. Sorry. Yep, you can. We'll turn to our secretary to read the 2 letters we received into the record.
So this is from Mr. Steve Gratch. Has a number of pictures of documents, so it's actually envelopes and letters.
Well, I just gave that to you a minute ago. That wasn't an email. Actually, this was submitted to us weeks
It's an email
and weeks ago.
Received
originally.
April 10, 2023.
Yeah, that was pending.
Good morning, Mr. Pesaconis. According to the South Windsor, Connecticut Inland Wetland Watercourse Conservation Regulations, the applicant for application 2311P has not met the procedural obligations as required by the laws. Application 2311P was submitted on March 9, 2023. Section 7, subsection 7.3, subsection B. The applicant shall also notify abutting property owners in writing by certified mail within at least 7 calendar days of the time an application is submitted that an application is pending before the agency. The applicant is required to provide a copy of the certified letter and to whom it was sent at the time the application is received and presented to the agency. The applicant may also be requested by the agency to notify other property owners at the direction of the agency. And the agency here is the inland wetlands, I assume. Section 8, subsection 8.2, subsection F, as written below and in the copy of the bylaws highlighted in the section that, in the attached bylaws as published by the town of South Windsor, subsection F, proof that all abutting property owners have been notified by certified mail that an application is pending before the agency. In the two pictures attached, the letter is dated March 10, 2023, and it's attached. The outer envelope is dated March 17, 2023, as a date of receipt by the United States Postal Service. The letters were received by the abutters on March 20, 2023, 10 days after the letter date, 11 days after the application filing. The method of postage payment was a first-class stamp and not trackable method, certified mail. Link to the U.S. PS certified mail. What is certified mail? Link is provided in electronic version of this letter. The abutters were not given enough time to contact the town in order to find out when the meeting would be to discuss the application with the public and specifics of the application. Furthermore, the applicant should be held accountable for not following procedure. In addition, the applicant still has a responsibility of notifying abutters by certified mail. And there's an envelope. I guess that's a March 17 stamp put on by the posted. There's a letter dated March 10
From
Peter DeMalley to the property owners.
Design professional.
And copy to design professional, yeah.
Yep.
Copy to inland wetlands, of course, regarding the application. Another letter from Peter DeMalley of Design Professionals, dated March 10. I don't know what the difference of these letters is. Rules and regular.
I think he said the text was slightly different.
Okay. And and another envelope showing a postage printout March 17. And I assume the round postmark is March 17, but I can't really tell that. The other letter from Marcia Buckley of 34 Summerwood Lane, South Windsor. This is a reference to application 2311P. As a resident of 6 years living in a 55-plus neighborhood near Pleasant Valley Road and Route 5, I cannot believe the increase in noise that has occurred within those 6 years. It started with the destruction of a large wooded area behind us, then construction, and now is occupied by the incredibly dense housing of South Windsor Woods. Now during all hours of the day, we hear the trucks, the racing cars, and motorcycles on Route 5, the dropping of metal that sometimes begin as early as 4 a.m. coming from Nutmeg Road. And of course, I would not want to leave out the blasting music coming from the stereo shop off Nutmeg Road, evenings and weekends. In addition, I've encountered trailer trucks coming head-on towards me, even though there is a sign prohibiting them, but not enforced, obviously, on Governor's Highway between Belden Road and Ellington Road, because they can't fit into the single lane, so I have to stop quickly and pull over to avoid being hit by them. The same with Pleasant Valley Road, where Amazon trailer trucks drive through, cutting down more trees for incubator businesses and storage space. Don't we have enough storage space in town already? What about the years-long empty warehouse on Ellington Road? What about citizens who don't get tax breaks for ruining the environment and destroying the culture of the town? It's appalling to me and to so many people in South Windsor that you allow this destruction to occur constantly and allow developers to destroy the lure of the community. Your excuse always seems to be that you want to build the tax base, but the tax rate for your regular people increases every budget. Why? Rather than protecting the current open lands, you're destroying our heritage, our trees, wildlife habitats, helping to make global warming worse, and ruining residential communities. Please stop and consider supporting the citizens for once and stop this destruction of South Windsor. Thank you for taking the time to read this letter. And I think that's the end of the letter.
Okay, so we read those two into the record. We have a motion on the floor to extend the public hearing to our next meeting in June, and it's been seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. That concludes our public hearings for this evening. We'll move on our agenda. I'll call the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning for Tuesday, June 13th, 2023 to order. First item on our agenda is public participation. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on something that is not on our agenda? Please step forward. Good evening.
Good evening. You gotta get your, okay, sorry.
Talk about Geisler.
You need your drive? You got it? All right. All right, good evening. Andrew Paterna, 301 Strawberry Lane. To the chair, Mr. Pastaconis, and commissioners, Mr. Doolittle, our town engineer, Ms. Leip, our town planner, thank you for all you do for planning and development in South Windsor. I'm here tonight to support the Geisler Sullivan Avenue redevelopment project. And I want to correct myself because I made a comment recently that said it's been 2.5 years. Well, I went back through your notes and you first approved the text amendment in January of 2020 for this project to be a mixed-use development project. So really it's been 3.5 years that this project has been in front of you. And the main reason it seems to have stalled is because of what I call the stairway to heaven and the sidewalk to nowhere. And recently there was a meeting, the chair, Mr. Pasaconis, was there, Ms. Leip was there, Mr. Doolittle, the two lawyers, the developer, and the state DOT officials. And within the first 10 minutes, they made it clear that a stairway up that embankment for anyone to walk on, along with the fact that there'll be a retaining wall along that steep embankment, is an impossibility because you can't make it ADA compliant. So that's off the table. So then you get to this sidewalk where there's a sidewalk directly across the street already there, where the developer has agreed to redo that main light at the entrance to the Sullivan Avenue Plaza so people can use the push-button crosswalk, walk up to Ayers Road. The sidewalk is set back away from the busy road of Sullivan Avenue, one of the busiest roads we have in South Windsor. So in order to make that sidewalk, if you really want to follow through with that, ADA compliant, you have to have a ramp that starts somewhere around the bank, the old SBM bank, to get up, around, and onto the sidewalk. It's only about another 120 feet to the red light, where they could safely cross. And then if you put this sidewalk in, what happens to the light? Are you asking the developer again to pay the $250,000 to $300,000 to upgrade that light? Or maybe you're asking the town to upgrade that light. But to make that a pedestrian-friendly crosswalk, it's got to have an upgraded light. So I'm not sure where we are with why this is holding up the entire project. And the state DOT is pretty much saying, this is not really a good idea. I don't think our police chief is even in favor of it. I think he's made some comments at your meetings that said it's an unsafe place to have a sidewalk right next to the guardrail on Sullivan Avenue on the inside of it. if you're concerned about students taking shortcuts, why would they walk up that sidewalk all the way to the red light when they can hop over the guardrail and go right across the street to the sidewalk going up to Ayers Road, if safety is a concern? So I'm not sure why we would want to hold up a person, a developer with a $30 million check, no tax dollars, who will upgrade the red light to make it pedestrian friendly, who will put in a new pump station for the sewer treatment plant, all on his dime. We have Geisler's, a 100-year-old family-owned company, willing to put $4 million to upgrade that store and make it the flagship store in this region for their chain. Why would we hold on to this when the sidewalk is across the street? And I believe the town, Mr. Doolittle might know this, I believe the town has already agreed to install sidewalks from the high school to that existing sidewalk across the street. We have a walkable community already. Now, if one of your concerns is students, have you done any estimates of how many students might be living in those apartments to go to our schools? Is there a number that you have in mind? Well, I can tell you the Oakland Road apartments, which are the closest ones I could come up with in terms of the mix of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 8 students, 78 units, and only 8 students are in our schools. And if you are concerned about people walking to school, if they go to Eli Terry, they're not walking to school. If they're at the high school, I've been to the high school at 7 and 7:15 in the morning. No one is walking to school. They're either on the school bus, their parents are driving them, or they have their own cars. So the only high school students I see walking are the students who park in the Little League field and then have to walk across the street to get to school in their own cars. This is 2023. Students don't walk to school. Unless you live on Sunset Terrace, by the way, off Ayers Road, where you can see the high school, that's different. You're right there. No one else is walking to school. I urge you to consider taking that one condition out of your resolution to approve this project. You've already approved it. Take that condition out and get this project moving forward, a $30 million revitalization development. I've heard people here tonight say, we have empty buildings, why don't we use those? Here's a great example. We have empty buildings. And if this drags on longer, it's not the developer we're gonna lose Geisler's. And that would be a shame. We should be working to save Geisler's, a family-owned grocery store. I thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate the work you do, but this project has just been on hold way too long. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak on anything that is not on our agenda? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move into our new business. Application 23-15P Evergreen LLC. I'll turn to our town planner. Michelle, do you have anything additional you want to?
No. Do we want to go through 4.216? I mean,
sure.
So I think we agreed upon the changes they submitted, and we're going to make the development proposal must instead of a unit. And then beyond that, we would be looking for any changes at 4.2.16. I think starting with Steve wanted it to say drive-through facilities and drive-up facilities for a title.
For the title. Yeah, drive-through and drive-up facilities, correct. Shall we go through each line to make sure there's no?
Sure, so for A, I would imagine we'd say only one drive-through / drive-up per building, right? You only get one. I'm not sure number 2 needs to be, or B doesn't need to change, I don't think.
Can we maybe just say that there's probably a dozen or 2 dozen places where the term drive-through appears? And
Could say drive-through, drive-up, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. And you would like, wherever I see drive-through, I'll add drive-up along with it. And I think C was one that you pointed out, Steve, is really specific to a drive-through facility, having a queuing lane versus a drive-up facility.
Yeah.
And I think it says drive-through right in C, so we're differentiating that.
I mean, maybe what we should say, you're now looking at paragraph N, as in November.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, maybe just add for the, say queue lanes for drive-through facilities shall be designed. Then the whole paragraph applies to drive-through.
Okay, yeah, so right in the beginning of that, I gotcha.
I don't know if I'm missing something that we need for drive-up, but. And then O as in Ohio. I mean, really, I think that applies to both, right?
I would apply it to both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. Again, as we heard from the applicant, it may not always be a lane that's the pickup window. It may just be they go in pickup, so.
Yeah.
But if it is a lane, I think it's good to have some parameters. So again, just to be clear, for P, Q, where it says drive-through pickup, I'll put drive-through pickup, I'll make them be for both, a drive-through or a pickup window. Okay.
Yep.
Yep, okay.
And R, I believe, correct?
Mhm. Go ahead.
Okay. We reference both on R, S, and T also.
Well, R doesn't, yeah, I'm sorry, drive-through lane, that really is talking about the, but yes, it's talking about the lane so much, but you would have it for a pickup window or a drive-through lane potentially.
Right.
So.
Okay. Steve, did you have?
No, that's it.
Okay. Was there anything else that we didn't talk about? Steve, you had a couple on the first page that I believe you made the
Oh, yeah.
changes already, Michelle, correct?
Yes, I did, yes.
Okay.
The ones in blue, and then we changed where it said the unit to be the development proposal.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioners, is there anything else, any other comments or questions, concerns that you have regarding this application, text amendment? Commissioner Carey?
Do we need to say anything that in the event that the drive-up facility, right, doesn't have a pickup window, that we need parking for people who are pulling up to have it brought to them, right? 'Cause, I mean, there's some that won't have a pickup window, right, is what my...
So do we want it to be, if you're doing a pickup window, that you have two ancillary parking spaces for potential pickup, something along those, for the pickup window?
Yeah, for those
Okay.
that don't have that.
Appropriately
Yeah, let's
signed.
just see. Maybe we can add it to, but we only want it for pickup windows, so maybe under R, where we're talking about each drive-through lane shall be properly striped, marked, otherwise distinctly delineated, we could put 2 waiting parking spaces are required for any pickup window, for a pickup window proposal, something along those lines. Under R. Okay, 2 spaces for a pickup window. Two designated spaces.
It's not really a pickup window, though. Two
Drive-up,
spaces
it's
for
where it's a drive-up
food
window.
pickup.
For food, yeah, for food, I get you.
Right.
For when you're not doing a drive-through, but you're going to have
Right.
food available for picking up.
And that's consistent with during the pandemic, for all those stores in Evergreen, a lot of them had 2 spots where people could deliver goods to them from the clothing stores and stuff.
Mhm. Okay, Commissioners, anything else we need added in this text amendment? If not,
Move we approve application 2315P O Evergreen text amendment. Zoning text amendment, well, let's see. A zoning text amendment to sections 422, 425, and 10.3. And I guess I should add 4.2.16 to modify the definition of drive-through facility and add a definition of a drive-up facility and fast casual restaurant. Modify several criteria in section 4.2.5 for such uses in the Buckland Gateway Development Zone. The Planning and Zoning Commission finds that the zone text amendment is in conformance with the Town Plan of Conservation and Development. The effective date of the zone change is June 25, 2023.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes unanimously. Okay, our next item is application 23-16P Ivanov text amendment.
Did we, or did we just? No, I think.
No, we didn't keep it open. We closed the public hearing. And what the suggestion was, I believe, from town staff was that we deny the application as presented. I believe the discussion amongst commissioners was deny without prejudice, but not accept it in the form that it said.
Yeah, it should just go up to town council. I know it should be some type of ordinance. I think that should be coming out for this.
Yeah.
Before it even comes to us for regulation as an insert, but.
Yeah.
You know, again, I think it almost has to work together, because I think you should be deciding how you want to allow these. Do you want them in every single family zone? Do you want them only in apartments? Do you want them to be owner occupied? Some of those basic land use tenants, I think you want to put into place. I think the town council is much better with the registration process of it, the licensing of it, the inspections for fire and build, those kinds of things. So I really think, if you want it, you want to make the decision, do you care? And I'll just give you an example. If someone has a house and they have an accessory apartment, can they Airbnb both of those? Is that okay? I mean, do you have to?
Yeah, should we-
So those are some of the land use decisions I think you would want to have
Should we-
as considerations.
Okay,
should
should we
we-
draft like an outline or something for them? Just like provisions that we want in an ordinance, or?
And maybe we're trying to just get a committee of someone from council, 2 people from council, and 2 commission members, and try to draft something together. I mean, I'd be glad to help facilitate.
So I'll
something
make a
like that.
motion.
Do your first thing first, and then we can move
I move that we deny application 23-16P, Ivanhoe text amendment, the request for a zoning text amendment to add a definition for short-term rentals and define criteria for such rentals in all residential zones without prejudice, and for the chair to approach town council to, if they consent, to establish a joint committee to discuss dealing with this in both zoning amendments, zoning text amendments and ordinances associated with short-term rentals.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Alan?
Yeah, a few things. So since it is a motion to reject the application, let's say I vote aye or yay, that would be in support of rejecting the application. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. The other thing was I was going to try and bring it up earlier, and I wasn't called on, but I'm pretty sure we skipped over the minutes. So I think after this vote, we go back up to the minutes and approve those. Yeah, those are my 2 things.
Okay, could you repeat that? What was your second point?
That we skipped over the minutes for May 16th and May 23rd.
Okay, good catch there. Thank you. Commissioner Carey. Okay.
I'm okay. I mean, I do think that, yeah, we should try and reach out to council and do something with this. And I think, like, taking into what Alan said earlier, what you said, Michelle, we would want this to be owner-occupied, because what we don't want is people buying up properties to use them for this purpose. Because that's the big, hit to rentals and everything else, so.
Just like we did with accessory apartments.
Yes,
Owner
yes,
has
yeah.
to be on the property. So,
Okay. Okay, is there any other discussion regarding the motion? Hearing and seeing none, and an aye is in favor of denying the application. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. The application is denied without prejudice. Okay. Yeah, where'd must be right here. Okay. We'll go back to the minutes. We have minutes for May 16th and May 23rd. Anybody have any issues with the minutes? If not, we'll accept them by consensus. Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay. Michelle, did we have any bonds?
Yeah, you should have them right in front of you. 3 bonds related to educational play care, a landscape bond, and 2 wetland bonds.
What time is our normal meeting ending? Do we have to extend, even though we're?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
I motion to extend the meeting till 10:15 p.m.
Okay, we have a motion to, we have a motion as a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to extend, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Bonds?
Bonds.
I move we approve a landscaping bond for application 19-12P, educational play care, the amount of 5,000, reduction of 5,000, balance of 0.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes unanimously.
We then have an inland wetland and conservation commission bond for 19-12P, both educational play care, erosion and sedimentation, amount of 10,000, reduction 10,000, balance of 0, and for educational play care stormwater in the amount of 20,000, also reduction of 20,000, leaving a balance of 0.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion passes unanimously. Okay, and old business, Michelle?
I have nothing for you at this time.
Okay. If our business has been completed for the evening, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
I'd like the motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. We are adjourned.
It's not 10:15 yet. I'm only kidding.